All right, it is 6:00 p.m. and I call to order the July 2021 Board of Trustees meeting. Do I hear a motion to enter executive session to consider employment recommendations for the 2021-2022 school year to receive legal advice concerning pending legal matters?
Madam Chair, I move that the board enter into executive session to consider employment recommendations for the 2021-2022 academic year and to receive legal advice concerning pending legal matters.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Do I have a second?
A second.
Thank you, Mr. Oswald. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And the motion carries. We are now entering an executive session. Any audience members may please swim out of the room. All right, Dr. Little, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Patriots' hopes a reality.
This past May, we had an incredible student experience in which two of my students, Rachel Logging and Karina Kowali, decided after taking this tour that they wanted to do something. They wanted to do something to preserve this cemetery and honor the legacy of the families buried in here. And so they organized a student-led, student-planned, student-executed brush cleanup in the cemetery. That much of the cemetery, roughly 60 to 70% of it, was overgrown with scrub trees and weeds and vines, and with that we felt that, and they felt it was important that if families wish to come here, they should be able to visit all the graves. And so on the course of a Saturday morning in May, over 3 to 3.5 hours, 25 to 30 students gave of their time and themselves and helped uncover the history that exists in this cemetery.
It's remarkable, honestly, to see all of the stuff and that we have this history about him, whereas all of the others, you don't have that. It's just a really remarkable thing to know that these people were people and not just indentions in the ground. We
have an opportunity to do history the right way. History is not sitting in desks in rows with a teacher regurgitating facts and figures. Not only do students get to take the tour here, my students also have an opportunity to become the storytellers, the truth tellers about the experiences of the African American community. And so now we've developed a kind of legacy project where one class passes it on to the next, and this powerful story that exists right here on our campus.
I think it's just a remarkable place, and we don't have something like this everywhere. And that as long as it's here and it's maintained, that we should know as much as we can and that it never really stops here.
Please join me in congratulating our new District Teacher of the Year, Rocky Creek Elementary 4-year-old kindergarten teacher, Mary Jane Britt.
I am on cloud nine. It's an honor. It's just such a wonderful feeling to represent all the teachers in our district. When I woke up this morning, I had to pinch myself and say, is this real? Did this really happen to me? I'm a firm believer in early education and early childhood, and the earlier that we can get students in our schools, the better off they're going to be. So really what I'd like to do is have more opportunities for preschool classes throughout our district so that these students can be prepared for kindergarten. To work here with these teachers every day, it's something so special. They're all amazing, and we like to say here, when one shines, we all shine. So I have to give it back to them, because without them, I don't think I would be who I am, the teacher I am today.
I'm feeling more confident than ever.
I think I'm going to become a better reader than when I was in 3rd grade.
This camp has been so great for so many kids. They look so forward to come in every day. They're excited to come in. They come in with smiles. They're just ready to be here, and we get to practice those skills to keep them from backsliding.
I go to
Bed, very nice. High five. Good job.
Sometimes when I read, I don't know the words, but I sound them out, so I think I really do know.
Over the summertime, we tend to kind of relax some of our learning. We may not retain as much information that we've learned all year long, and these students are in danger of some of that. So this camp does real well at maintaining the learning that they've learned over the year, and hopefully even boosting a little bit more and keeping their minds engaged over the summer so they come back ready to learn.
I feel like I've grown as a learner at writing, reading, and math, because at math, I'm like doing really well.
Just keeping their reading minds engaged and ready. We hope that that will help build confidence so that when they come back the next school year, they'll feel like they stayed engaged with their reading and ready to pick up right where they left off.
He's born in 1893, middle of the Jim Crow South.
Seeing it and actually coming here and looking at the other cemetery that actually has slaves in them, it really just moved me. We came up here, actually, Mr. Burgess showed us with our history class. We came up here and he gave this speech on Davis Gant, and I remember standing up there and I wanted to do something, and just really knowing that that he was a real person.
Of course, it's going to take a full another war and then the civil rights movement to make his and his compatriots' hopes a reality. This past May, we had an incredible student experience in which 2 of my students, Rachel Logine and Karina Kowali, decided after taking this tour that they wanted to do something. They wanted to do something to preserve this cemetery and honor the legacy of the families buried in here. And so they organized a student-led, student-planned, student-executed brush cleanup in this cemetery. That much of the cemetery, roughly 60 to 70% of it, was overgrown with scrub trees and weeds and vines. And with that, we felt that, and they felt it was important that if families wished to come here, they should be able to visit all the graves. And so on the course of a Saturday morning in May, over 3 to 3.5 hours, 25 to 30 students gave of their time and themselves and helped uncover the history that exists in this cemetery.
It's remarkable, honestly, to see all of the stuff and that we have this history about him, whereas all of the others, you don't have that. It's just a really remarkable thing to know that these people were people and not just indentions in the ground.
We have an opportunity to do history the right way. History is not sitting in desks in rows with a teacher regurgitating facts and figures. Not only do students get to take the tour here, my students also have an opportunity to become the storytellers, the truth tellers about the experiences of the African American community. And so now we've developed a kind of legacy project where one class passes it on to the next, and this powerful story that exists right here on our campus.
I think it's just a remarkable place, and we don't have something like this everywhere, and that as long as it's here and it's maintained, that we should know as much as we can and that it never really stops here.
Please join me in congratulating our new District Teacher of the Year, Rocky Creek Elementary 4-year-old kindergarten teacher, Mary Jane Britt.
I am on cloud nine. It's an honor. It's just such a wonderful feeling to represent all the teachers in our district. When I woke up this morning, I had to pinch myself and say, is this real? Did this really happen to me? I'm a firm believer in early education and early childhood, and the earlier that we can get students in our schools, the better off they're going to be. So really what I'd like to do is have more opportunities for preschool classes throughout our district so that these students can be prepared for kindergarten. To work here with these teachers every day, it's something so special. They're all amazing, and we like to say here, when one shines, we all shine. So I have to give it back to them, because without them, I don't think I would be who I am, the teacher I am today.
I'm feeling more confident than ever. I think I'm going to become a better reader than when I was in 3rd grade.
This camp has been so great for so many kids. They look so forward to come in every day. They're excited to come in. They come in with smiles. They're just ready to be here, and we get to practice those skills to keep them from backsliding.
I go to bed.
Bed, very nice. High five. Good job.
Sometimes when I read, I don't know the words, but I sound them out, so I think I really do know.
Over the summertime, we tend to kind of relax some of our learning. We may not retain as much information that we've learned all year long, and these students are in danger of some of that. So this camp does real well at maintaining the learning that they've learned over the year, and hopefully even boosting a little bit more and keeping their minds engaged over the summer so they come back ready to learn.
I feel like I've grown as a learner at writing, reading, and math, because at math I'm like doing really well.
Just keeping their reading minds engaged and ready. We hope that that will help build confidence so that when they come back the next school year, they'll feel like they stayed engaged with their reading and ready to pick up right where they left off.
He's born in 1893, middle of the Jim Crow South.
Seeing it and actually coming here and looking at the other cemetery that actually has slaves in them, it really just moved me. We came up here, actually, Mr. Burgess showed us with our history class. We came up here and he gave this speech on Davis Gant, and I remember standing up there and I wanted to do something, and just really knowing that that he was a real person.
Of course, it's going to take a full another war and then the civil rights movement to make his and his compatriots' hopes a reality. This past May, we had an incredible student experience in which two of my students, Rachel Logine and Karina Kowali, decided after taking this tour that they wanted to do something. They wanted to do something to preserve this cemetery and honor the legacy of the families buried in here. And so they organized a student-led, student-planned, student-executed brush cleanup in this cemetery. That much of the cemetery, roughly 60 to 70% of it, was overgrown with scrub trees and weeds and vines. And with that, we felt that, and they felt it was important that if families wished to come here, they should be able to visit all the graves. And so on the course of a Saturday morning in May, over 3 to 3.5 hours, 25 to 30 students gave of their time and themselves and helped uncover the history that exists in this cemetery.
It's remarkable, honestly, to see all of the stuff and that we have this history about him, whereas all of the others, you don't have that. It's just a really remarkable thing to know that these people were people and not just indentions in the ground.
We have an opportunity to do history the right way. History is not sitting in desks in rows with a teacher regurgitating facts and figures. Not only do students get to take the tour here, my students also have an opportunity to become the storytellers, the truth tellers about the experiences of the African American community. And so now we've developed a kind of legacy project where one class passes it on to the next, and this powerful story that exists right here on our campus.
I think it's just a remarkable place, and we don't have something like this everywhere, and that as long as it's here and it's maintained, that we should know as much as we can and that it never really stops here.
Please join me in congratulating our new District Teacher of the Year, Rocky Creek Elementary 4-year-old kindergarten teacher, Mary Jane Britt.
I am on cloud nine. It's an honor. It's just such a wonderful feeling to represent all the teachers in our district. When I woke up this morning, I had to pinch myself and say, is this real? Did this really happen to me? I'm a firm believer in early education and early childhood, and the earlier that we can get students in our schools, the better off they're going to be. So really what I'd like to do is have more opportunities for preschool classes throughout our district so that these students can be prepared for kindergarten. To work here with these teachers every day, it's something so special. They're all amazing, and we like to say here, when one shines, we all shine. So I have to give it back to them, because without them, I don't think I would be who I am, the teacher I am today.
I'm feeling more confident than ever.
I think I'm going to become a better reader than when I was in 3rd grade.
This camp has been so great for so many kids. They look so forward to come in every day. They're excited to come in. They come in with smiles. They're just ready to be here, and we get to practice those skills to keep them from backsliding.
I go to
Bed. Very nice. High five. Good job.
Sometimes when I read, I don't know the words, but I sound them out, so I think I really do know.
Over the summertime, we tend to kind of relax some of our learning. We may not retain as much information that we've learned all year long, and these students are in danger of some of that. So this camp does real well at maintaining the learning that they've learned over the year, and hopefully even boosting a little bit more and keeping their minds engaged over the summer so they come back ready to learn.
I feel like I've grown as a learner at writing, reading, and math, because at math I'm like doing really well.
Just keeping their reading minds engaged and ready. We hope that that will help build confidence so that when they come back the next school year, they'll feel like they stayed engaged with their reading and ready to pick up right where they left off.
He's born in 1893, middle of the Jim Crow South.
Seeing it and actually coming here and looking at the other cemetery that actually has slaves in them, it really just moved me. We came up here, actually, Mr. Burgess showed us with our history class. We came up here and he gave this speech on Davis Gant, and I remember standing up there and I wanted to do something, and just really knowing that that he was a real person.
Of course, it's going to take a full another war and in the civil rights movement to make his and his compatriots' hopes a reality. This past May, we had an incredible student experience in which 2 of my students, Rachel Logine and Karina Kowali, decided after taking this tour that they wanted to do something. They wanted to do something to preserve this cemetery and honor the legacy of the families buried in here. And so they organized a student-led, student-planned, student-executed brush cleanup in this cemetery. That much of the cemetery, roughly 60 to 70% of it, was overgrown with scrub trees and weeds and vines. And with that, we felt that, and they felt it was important that if families wished to come here, they should be able to visit all the graves. And so on the course of a Saturday morning in May, over 3 to 3.5 hours, 25 to 30 students gave of their time and themselves and helped uncover the history that exists in this cemetery.
It's remarkable, honestly, to see all of the stuff and that we have this history about him, whereas all of the others, you don't have that. It's just a really remarkable thing to know that these people were people and not just indentions in the ground.
We have an opportunity to do history the right way. History is not sitting in desks in rows with a teacher regurgitating facts and figures. Not only do students get to take the tour here, my students also have an opportunity to become the storytellers, the truth tellers about the experiences of the African American community. And so now we've developed a kind of legacy project where one class passes it on to the next, and this powerful story that exists right here on our campus.
I think it's just a remarkable place, and we don't have something like this everywhere, and that as long as it's here and it's maintained, that we should know as much as we can and that it never really stops here.
Please join me in congratulating our new District Teacher of the Year, Rocky Creek Elementary 4-year-old kindergarten teacher, Mary Jane Britt.
I am on cloud nine. It's an honor. It's just such a wonderful feeling to represent all the teachers in our district. When I woke up this morning, I had to pinch myself and say, is this real? Did this really happen to me? I'm a firm believer in early education and early childhood, and the earlier that we can get students in our schools, the better off they're going to be. So really what I'd like to do is have more opportunities for preschool classes throughout our district so that these students can be prepared for kindergarten. To work here with these teachers every day, it's something so special. They're all amazing, and we like to say here, when one shines, we all shine. So I have to give it back to them, because without them, I don't think I would be who I am, the teacher I am today.
I'm feeling more confident than ever.
I think I'm going to become a better reader than when I was in 3rd grade.
This camp has been so great for so many kids. They look so forward to come in every day. They're excited to come in. They come in with smiles. They're just ready to be here, and we get to practice those skills to keep them from backsliding.
I go to bed.
Bed, very nice. High five. Good job.
Sometimes when I read, I don't know the words, but I sound them out, so I think I really do know.
Over the summertime, we tend to kind of relax some of our learning. We may not retain as much information that we've learned all year long, and these students are in danger of some of that. So this camp does real well at maintaining the learning that they've learned over the year, and hopefully even boosting a little bit more and keeping their minds engaged over the summer so they come back ready to learn.
I feel like I've grown as a learner at writing, reading, and math, because at math I'm like doing really well.
Just keeping their reading minds engaged and ready. We hope that that will help build confidence so that when they come back the next school year, they'll feel like they stayed engaged with their reading and ready to pick up right where they left off.
He's born in 1893, middle of the Jim Crow South.
Seeing it and actually coming here and looking at the other cemetery that actually has slaves in them, it really just moved me. We came up here, actually, Mr. Burgess showed us with our history class. We came up here and he gave this speech on Davis Gant, and I remember standing up there and I wanted to do something, and just really knowing that that he was a real person.
Of course, it's going to take a full another war and then the civil rights movement to make his and his compatriots' hopes a reality. This past May, we had an incredible student experience in which two of my students, Rachel Logine and Karina Kowali, decided after taking this tour that they wanted to do something. They wanted to do something to preserve this cemetery and honor the legacy of the families buried in here. And so they organized a student-led, student-planned, student-executed brush cleanup in this cemetery. That much of the cemetery, roughly 60 to 70% of it, was overgrown with scrub trees and weeds and vines. And with that, we felt that, and they felt it was important that if families wished to come here, they should be able to visit all the graves. And so on the course of a Saturday morning in May, over 3 to 3.5 hours, 25 to 30 students gave of their time and themselves and helped uncover the history that exists in this cemetery.
It's remarkable, honestly, to see all of the stuff and that we have this history about him, whereas all of the others, you don't have that. It's just a really remarkable thing to know that these people were people and not just indentions in the ground.
We have an opportunity to do history the right way. History is not sitting in desks in rows with a teacher regurgitating facts and figures. Not only do students get to take the tour here, my students also have an opportunity to become the storytellers, the truth tellers about the experiences of the African American community. And so now we've developed a kind of legacy project where one class passes it on to the next, and this powerful story that exists right here on our campus.
I think it's just a remarkable place, and we don't have something like this everywhere, and that as long as it's here and it's maintained, that we should know as much as we can and that it never really stops here.
Please join me in congratulating our new District Teacher of the Year, Rocky Creek Elementary 4-year-old kindergarten teacher, Mary Jane Britt.
I am on cloud nine. It's an honor. It's just such a wonderful feeling to represent all the teachers in our district. When I woke up this morning, I had to pinch myself and say, is this real? Did this really happen to me? I'm a firm believer in early education and early childhood, and the earlier that we can get students in our schools, the better off they're going to be. So really what I'd like to do is have more opportunities for preschool classes throughout our district so that these students can be prepared for kindergarten. To work here with these teachers every day, it's something so special. They're all amazing, and we like to say here, when one shines, we all shine. So I have to give it back to them, because without them, I don't think I would be who I am, the teacher I am today.
I'm feeling more confident than ever.
I think I'm going to become a better reader than when I was in 3rd grade.
This camp has been so great for so many kids. They look so forward to come in every day. They're excited to come in. They come in with smiles. They're just ready to be here, and we get to practice those skills to keep them from backsliding.
I go to bed.
Very nice. High five. Good job.
Sometimes when I read, I don't know the words, but I sound them out, so I think I really do know.
Over the summertime, we tend to kind of relax some of our learning. We may not retain as much information that we've learned all year long, and these students are in danger of some of that. So this camp does real well at maintaining the learning that they've learned over the year, and hopefully even boosting a little bit more and keeping their minds engaged over the summer so they come back ready to learn.
I feel like I've grown as a learner at writing, reading, and math, because at math, I'm like doing really well.
Just keeping their reading minds engaged and ready. We hope that that will help build confidence so that when they come back the next school year, they'll feel like they stayed engaged with their reading and ready to pick up right where they left off.
He's born in 1893, middle of the Jim Crow South.
Seeing it and actually coming here and looking at the other cemetery that actually has slaves in them, it really just moved me. We came up here, actually, Mr. Burgess showed us with our history class. We came up here and he gave this speech on Davis Gant, and I remember standing up there and I wanted to do something, and just really knowing that that he was a real person.
Of course, it's going to take a full another war and in the civil rights movement to make his and his compatriots' hopes a reality. This past May, we had an incredible student experience in which 2 of my students, Rachel Logine and Karina Kowali, decided after taking this tour that they wanted to do something. They wanted to do something to preserve this cemetery and honor the legacy of the families buried in here. And so they organized a student-led, student-planned, student-executed brush cleanup in this cemetery. That much of the cemetery, roughly 60 to 70% of it, was overgrown with scrub trees and weeds and vines. And with that, we felt that, and they felt it was important that if families wished to come here, they should be able to visit all the graves. And so on the course of a Saturday morning in May, over 3 to 3.5 hours, 25 to 30 students gave of their time and themselves and helped uncover the history that exists in this cemetery.
It's remarkable, honestly, to see all of the stuff and that we have this history about him, whereas all of the others, you don't have that. It's just a really remarkable thing to know that these people were people and not just indentions in the ground.
We have an opportunity to do history the right way. History is not sitting in desks in rows with a teacher regurgitating facts and figures. Not only do students get to take the tour here, my students also have an opportunity to become the storytellers, the truth tellers about the experiences of the African American community. And so now we've developed a kind of legacy project where one class passes it on to the next, and this powerful story that exists right here on our campus.
I think it's just a remarkable place, and we don't have something like this everywhere, and that as long as it's here and it's maintained, that we should know as much as we can and that it never really stops here.
Please join me in congratulating our new District Teacher of the Year, Rocky Creek Elementary 4-year-old kindergarten teacher, Mary Jane Britt.
I am on cloud nine. It's an honor. It's just such a wonderful feeling to represent all the teachers in our district. When I woke up this morning, I had to pinch myself and say, is this real? Did this really happen to me? I'm a firm believer in early education and early childhood, and the earlier that we can get students in our schools, the better off they're going to be. So really what I'd like to do is have more opportunities for preschool classes throughout our district so that these students can be prepared for kindergarten. To work here with these teachers every day, it's something so special. They're all amazing, and we like to say here, when one shines, we all shine. So I have to give it back to them, because without them, I don't think I would be who I am, the teacher I am today.
I'm feeling more confident than ever.
I think I'm going to become a better reader than when I was in 3rd grade.
This camp has been so great for so many kids. They look so forward to come in every day. They're excited to come in. They come in with smiles. They're just ready to be here, and we get to practice those skills to keep them from backsliding.
I go to bed.
Bed, very nice. High five. Good job.
Sometimes when I read, I don't know the words, but I sound them out, so I think I really do know.
Over the summertime, we tend to kind of relax some of our learning. We may not retain as much information that we've learned all year long, and these students are in danger of some of that. So this camp does real well at maintaining the learning that they've learned over the year, and hopefully even boosting a little bit more and keeping their minds engaged over the summer so they come back ready to learn.
I feel like I've grown as a learner at writing, reading, and math, because at math I'm like doing really well.
Just keeping their reading minds engaged and ready. We hope that that will help build confidence so that when they come back the next school year, they'll feel like they stayed engaged with their reading and ready to pick up right where they left off.
He's born in 1893, middle of the Jim Crow South.
Seeing it and actually coming here and looking at the other cemetery that actually has slaves in them, it really just moved me. We came up here, actually, Mr. Burgess showed us with our history class. We came up here and he gave this speech on Davis Gant, and I remember standing up there and I wanted to do something, and just really knowing that that he was a real person.
Of course, it's going to take a full another war and then the civil rights movement to make his and his compatriots' hopes a reality. This past May, we had an incredible student experience in which two of my students, Rachel Logine and Karina Kowali, decided after taking this tour that they wanted to do something. They wanted to do something to preserve this cemetery and honor the legacy of the families buried in here. And so they organized a student-led, student-planned, student-executed brush cleanup in this cemetery. That much of the cemetery, roughly 60 to 70% of it, was overgrown with scrub trees and weeds and vines. And with that, we felt that, and they felt it was important that if families wished to come here, they should be able to visit all the graves. And so on the course of a Saturday morning in May, over 3 to 3.5 hours, 25 to 30 students gave of their time and themselves and helped uncover the history that exists in this cemetery.
It's remarkable, honestly, to see all of the stuff and that we have this history about him, whereas all of the others, you don't have that. It's just a really remarkable thing to know that these people were people and not just indentions in the ground.
We have an opportunity to do history the right way. History is not sitting in desks in rows with a teacher regurgitating facts and figures. Not only do students get to take the tour here, my students also have an opportunity to become the storytellers, the truth tellers about the experiences of the African American community. And so now we've developed a kind of legacy project where one class passes it on to the next, and this powerful story that exists right here on our campus.
I think it's just a remarkable place, and we don't have something like this everywhere, and that as long as it's here and it's maintained, that we should know as much as we can and that it never really stops here.
Please join me in congratulating our new District Teacher of the Year, Rocky Creek Elementary 4-year-old kindergarten teacher, Mary Jane Britt.
I am on cloud nine. It's an honor. It's just such a wonderful feeling to represent all the teachers in our district. When I woke up this morning, I had to pinch myself and say, is this real? Did this really happen to me? I'm a firm believer in early education and early childhood, and the earlier that we can get students in our schools, the better off they're going to be. So really what I'd like to do is have more opportunities for preschool classes throughout our district so that these students can be prepared for kindergarten. To work here with these teachers every day, it's something so special. They're all amazing, and we like to say here, when one shines, we all shine. So I have to give it back to them, because without them, I don't think I would be who I am, the teacher I am today.
I'm feeling more confident than ever.
I think I'm going to become a better reader than when I was in 3rd grade.
This camp has been so great for so many kids. They look so forward to come in every day. They're excited to come in. They come in with smiles. They're just ready to be here, and we get to practice those skills to keep them from backsliding.
I go to bed.
Very nice. High five. Good job.
Sometimes when I read, I don't know the words, but I sound them out, so I think I really do know.
Over the summertime, we tend to kind of relax some of our learning. We may not retain as much information that we've learned all year long, and these students are in danger of some of that. So this camp does real well at maintaining the learning that they've learned over the year, and hopefully even boosting a little bit more and keeping their minds engaged over the summer so they come back ready to learn.
I feel like I've grown as a learner at writing, reading, and math, because at math I'm like doing really well.
Just keeping their reading minds engaged and ready. We hope that that will help build confidence so that when they come back the next school year, they'll feel like they stayed engaged with their reading and ready to pick up right where they left off.
Madam Chair, I move that the board conclude executive session and begin general session.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Oswald. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And the motion carries. I call to order the general session of the July 20th meeting. The district is in compliance with the South Carolina Freedom of Information Act by notifying the media of the date, time, and place of the meeting. The district tapes the meeting for accuracy in preparing the minutes. At this time, I yield the floor to Mr. Mike Anderson.
Madam Chair, fellow board members, staff, and guests, would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
Madam Chair, I move that the board approve the agenda as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Oswald. Do I have a second? Second. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Is there any discussion? All right. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? The motion carries. Board members, you have received the minutes of the June 1st and June 22nd board meetings. The June 22nd meetings include an addendum that you received this afternoon. Other than the corrections that have been received and made, are there any other corrections? Hearing none, the minutes will be accepted as presented. All right. And you'll just notice that we're a little short-handed up here this evening. Dr. Guyton is out of town, and Ms. Henson is ill, and Dr. Powers will be joining us soon. He had a work obligation, but should be here in the next few minutes. Board, do I hear a motion to approve? How many do we have? 29 certified recommendations for the 2021-2022 school year.
Madam Chair, I move that the board approve 29 certified recommendations for the 2021-2022 school year.
Thank you, Mr. Oswald. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Is there any discussion? All right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And the motion carries. And how many of these do we have, Mr. Oswald? 6. Thank you. Do I hear a motion to approve 6 administrative recommendations for the 2021-2022 school year?
Madam Chair, I move that the board approve 6 administrative recommendations for 2021-2022 school year.
Thank you, Mr. Oswald. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Is there any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And the motion carries. Do I hear a motion for the board to accept the newly hired support staff report as presented by administration?
Madam Chair, I move that the board accept the newly hired support staff report as presented by the administration.
Thank you, Mr. Oswald. Do I have a second? Second. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Is there any discussion? And I'll just point out that this is a change in procedure for the board that the board approved at our last meeting, and we will begin a ratification process for support staff recommendations, and this is what that is. So, all right. Any other discussion? All right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And the motion carries. During executive session, we received a quarterly update on pending legal matters. This was for informational purposes only, and no action is required at this time. All right, we are moving right along to citizens' participation. Lexington County School District One's Board of Trustees solicits the advice and counsel of its citizens. To encourage this participation, the board provides a citizens' participation period during board meetings. In order to speak, you must be the parent or legal guardian of a student currently attending a Lexington District 1 school, a taxpayer residing in the Lexington District 1 attendance area, an employee of the district, or a student currently attending a Lexington District 1 school. You may comment on agenda items, school operations, policies, programs, or other matters. You may not speak about specific individuals, whether students or staff. We want to remind you that this meeting is being live streamed and that the recording of this meeting will be part of the public record in perpetuity. We want to give everyone who came tonight an opportunity to speak, and in order to do that, I, the board chair, will call on each speaker by name and ask you to approach the lectern at the back of the room. The board will not reply to your remarks nor take any action during the board meeting in response to your comments or questions. You may address the board for up to 3 minutes. Please do not clap or make any comments, either while an individual speaks or after he or she finishes. As you came in tonight, you received a card to fill out if you indicated you wanted to speak. That card asks for your name, address, and other information. However, I will read out only your name, the town you reside in, and the name of the schools your children attend when it is your turn to speak. If you are unable to attend the meeting, or you're uncomfortable addressing the board during the meeting in person, you may reach out to the board by email, telephone, or mail, and our contact information is available on the Lexington One website. We welcome all messages. All right. First, we have Ms. Madison Rogers. She wants to speak about the reopening plans, and she has students that attend New Providence Elementary.
All right, good evening. I appreciate your attention. I am here representing a great number of parents in order to continue to hold your feet to the fire when it comes to any overreach of authority that may be taken when it comes to our children and our rights as parents to make health decisions for them. South Carolina schools cannot require masks for any student or staff due to a proviso passed within the state's budget. The proviso states that masks cannot be required on school property or else the school can lose funding. South Carolina schools cannot require masks on buses either, nor can South Carolina districts require testing or vaccination. Please update the Lexington One website and your reopening plans. I'm encouraging you as representatives of this district to refrain from being sneaky and trying to implement this disgusting tactic once again on our developing children. You do not want a war, and we as parents do not want to fight one, but we will if it becomes necessary. Not only that, but you will begin to see a decline in enrollment if we are pushed to our limits again. I encourage you to cease and desist with the vaccination propaganda and bullying and keep any pop-up clinics away from our school sites. If a parent wants that for their child, they know good and well where to go. Mr. Little, I think you would be wise to encourage our teachers and coaches to steer clear of bullying and segregation tactics in the classroom and on the fields. We have heard of an instance of bullying from a Dutch Fort coach just recently, and please note that will not be tolerated in this district. We've all seen the video of Molly Spearman encouraging our state teachers and coaches to do just this, bully and peer pressure students to take this experimental drug. If you've not seen the video I'm referencing, I'm happy to email it. The fact that our state superintendent is telling our educators to bully students is criminal, and here's hoping she won't be around much longer. On another note, the issue of CRT and SEL within our schools' curriculums, just don't. This is another new battle that parents, teachers, legislators, governors, you name it, are beginning to and willing to fight. Go ahead and save yourself the trouble and do what you can to keep this out of Lexington One. Or else that whole stronger together slogan will have to be changed, as instead you'll be allowing segregation and racism into our classrooms. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rogers. Next, we have Shirley Hilton. She wants to speak on the school curriculum, and I believe she is a community member.
We appreciate the opportunity to be here at the board meeting tonight. I'm Shirley Hilton, my husband Greg. We are the grandparents of a 3-year-old, and we are very invested in her life. We are very concerned about some of the things that we hear about education these days, as I'm sure a lot of people are. And we are here mainly to learn more about the curriculum for our district, hoping that the conservative values that we embrace will be embraced by our board and by our teachers and by the administration of our schools. We continue to hear some concerning things from some of our schools already, from the parents there, about what the children are being taught, how they're being taught, and the information that's being shared with them. We are not conspiracy theorists, we are not, but we are concerned grandparents and want our granddaughter to have the opportunity to have a very value-based curriculum, but also mainly to get a good education. You know, we feel like the values need really to be taught in the home, not in our schools. And we feel like parents need to be responsible in doing that, and grandparents, which is what we're trying to do. And we realize that the board has a difficult job to do, as do our school administrators, but we just hope that what we see at the board meetings and in our schools is conducive to learning and good learning. I thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Hilton. I think we have one more card. Thank you. Next, we have Ms. Debbie Hine. She wants to speak about no vaccine clinics, and she has a student that attends Lexington High School.
Hi, good evening. I'm surprised there aren't more people coming to speak with all these seats in here, but it's good to see a lot of seats. It's nice to see new chief members here and new spots. Welcome to your new jobs. I definitely am seconding that I don't want any vaccine clinics in our campuses and our schools. It's experimental use only. It has no business being coerced and pushed and shoved in our kids' faces and down their throats. None at all. You can't treat them different if they get a shot or not. You just can't do it. It's not FDA approved. Okay, it's only for emergency use authorization. It's illegal to coerce and bribe kids into getting it because it's illegal to do that for anybody. While I'm here on this topic, I just would like to mention how difficult it is to get your hands on curriculum here in this district. It's unbelievably difficult. I still don't have my hands on some curriculum, and I first asked for it on May 17th. Keep getting the runaround all the way up to the board, all the way, but it's not going to end. It's not over. Another thing I'd like to talk about is our district's relationship with the Leadership Academy. I know this goes back to years, at least early 2017 minimum. That's at least when we started paying them good money. If you're not sure what that is and you're watching this, I really recommend you look up the Leadership Academy. It's based out of New York City. Look up the 27-minute documentary that was partly filmed on our campuses. It's crazy. Look up the hour-long webinar that Dr. Little did back in March of this year. It's all on their website. That's your critical race theory in this school, and it's being brought in through our administrators. It's through our Principals Training Academy. It's through our All Means All Committee. It's here. If you don't think it's here in Lexington 1, it's here. Our superintendent is hiding it. He uses much more palatable language here for this district. But when you watch him agree to everything that other superintendent says in that hour-long webinar, wow, it's here. It's here. And that's all I have to say tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hine. All right. Moving on to 9.0. Hang on just a moment. All right, action items. We have 9.1, which is, well, I'll just ask for the motion first. Do I hear a motion that the board approve authorization of the superintendent as the official Title I representative?
Madam Chair, I move that the Board of Trustees authorize the superintendent as its Title I representative. This will give the superintendent the authorization to make day-to-day Title I decisions on behalf of the Board of Trustees.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Oswald. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Mary Gaskins, who is going to explain to us what this is.
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Dr. Little, this is a routine item for approval that gives Dr. Little the authority to act on behalf of the Board of Trustees for items related to Title I schools. The district has almost $3.6 million in funding allocated to our Title I schools for the 2021-2022 school year. The criteria to be designated as a Title I school is based on the total pupils in poverty. The funding comes from the federal government through the state, and the state distributes the funds using a formula prescribed by the federal government, and those accounts are audited each year. And I'm proud to share that in 2020-2021, Title I received a successful program audit from the State Department of Education and a successful finance audit as well. Based on the Pupils in Poverty Index, we'll actually be adding 3 new Title I elementary schools this year. They are Carolina Springs Elementary, Lexington Elementary, and Deerfield Elementary. That brings us to a total of 12 Title I schools, 11 of them elementary and 1 middle. Each year, based on a needs assessment, our Title I schools develop their Title I plan for the year, and these funds can be allocated for instructional personnel, professional learning, instructional supplies and curriculum, and programs for family engagement.
Thank you, Mrs. Gaskins. Board, do you have any questions? All right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion carries. Do I hear a motion that the board approve the recommended 2021-2022 local board approved courses for high school and middle school?
Madam Chair, I move that the Board of Trustees approve the recommended local board approved courses for high school and middle school 2021-2022.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Oswald. I'm going to turn it back over to Mrs. Gaskins to explain this one.
Absolutely. Each year, we ask the board to approve courses that may not be offered in other districts, but our schools would like to offer them. These courses, which are highlighted in red on your report, are for additional support for individualized efforts in our middle and high schools. They are not courses that are in the South Carolina Department of Ed coding system or course list, and that's why they must receive local board approval. Dr. Clamp, in partnership with Dr. Rivers, reviewed the 7 new courses, and we are seeking approval from the board.
Thank you, Mrs. Gaskins. Does anyone have any questions? All right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion carries. Do I hear a motion that the board approve the recommendations of the district instructional materials adoption committees as district adopted instructional materials?
Madam Chair, I move that the board approve the recommendations of the district instructional materials adoption committees as district adopted instructional materials for 2021-2022, mathematics grade 9 through 12, health grades 6 through 8, health grades 9 through 12, science grades 9 through 12, social study grades 9 through 12, and career and technology education.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Oswald. Ms. Gaskins?
Okay, so these texts were selected from the approved list from the South Carolina Department of Education. A committee of teachers that represent our schools in the content areas for each text were gathered to review the materials, and the recommendations that are presented for approval are from those committees. As always, just as a reminder, this is based on whether these materials are funded.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions for Mrs. Gaskins on this item?
I have a couple of questions. This is Jada. So where it says the administration reviewed the request and found it to be in compliance with board policy, has this been brought to the board in the past?
It's in line with policy IJJ, the textbook adoption policy.
Okay. I just don't recall, since I've been on here and in the past few years, that these were brought to us. I mean, this is great. I appreciate it. I was just curious where that was in policy. I know Kathy's not here. I spoke with her a couple of days ago, and I know she had a couple of questions. I wish I had written those down. I thought she was going to be here. But I know one of those questions was about the math curriculum, and she says that one of these has a more current edition than what we're currently adopting, and it comes with a My Math lab.
I will be happy to check on that if she doesn't mind following up with me to let me know which text it is. This is based on a list we were provided by the state, so I'm not sure if the more current edition was on that list, but I'll be happy to follow up if she doesn't mind letting me know which course.
Okay. Yeah, because she knew the year. I think there's one that's quite a few years newer than what's being recommended on here. Let's see here. And so I'm just curious, I guess, Dr. Little, this is a question for you. So since this committee actually reports to the board, and we vote on the recommendations, is this not considered a public committee?
The policy states that it's a committee of teachers.
Right. So it doesn't matter if it's board members or not. It's my understanding through FOIA that if there's a committee that reports to the board and the board takes action based on their recommendations, that's a public committee. Okay. Also, we have another policy, BDBD, that says the district will encourage students to participate in curriculum evaluation. Ms. Gaskins, I know you're new, but do you know if that took place here, if that's going to take place?
Based on the committees that I have, there were not students on the committees. I do know that we followed the textbook adoption policy, which was, required the committee of teachers. I do not think students were on this committee. But I will take a look at that policy as we move forward with this process and make sure that we're aware of what needs to take place.
Okay, thank you. I mean, based on what we have here, we know, like I said, I wish Kathy were here. We know that there's at least one book in here that is newer, that comes with, I guess, a subscription to My Math Lab. And we don't know if this committee is supposed to be public or not. I mean, based on that, I'd be a little hesitant to approve this request until we get some clarification, but I guess that's left up to the board.
And it may be that the newer textbook, that the recommendation list from the State Department preceded the publication of the newer book. I mean, that's very possible. That's something that's kind of out of our hands. I know that the committee probably just works from the recommendations because we can't vary from what they.
Right, and the whole cycle is a little off of its timeline right now. So we're behind quite a few years on a number of these adoptions anyway, but then because of COVID, the cycle got thrown off even a little more. Typically, we bring this to you in like March or April of each year. Is when you approve, we're able to go ahead and begin ordering the materials that have been funded. So this is a little bit of a time-sensitive issue if you're able to approve it for those adoptions that have been funded.
So these are materials that will be implemented when school starts in August.
As long as they're funded, and a couple of these have been.
Okay, so if we have approved these, I mean, I don't want to hold up any kind of instructional material for students. Is there a way, once Kathy follows up with you, that you can get back with us and say, okay, we checked on this? And
Absolutely,
okay.
Yes. I'll look into both of your concerns and follow up.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think maybe going forward, in light of the policy about the Instructional Materials Committee being a board-appointed committee, technically a board-appointed committee, I think that may be something that we can make sure in the future that is conducted according to our Dr. Little has already made a note of that. Thank you very much. All right. Board members, are there any other questions for Ms. Gaskins? All right. Okay. Do we have a motion and a second? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And the motion carries. Do I hear a motion that the board approve the waiver for seat time compliance?
Madam Chair, I move that the Board of Trustees approve the waiver for seat time compliance, having the capacity to provide a virtual option to non-traditional learners by waiving seat time will serve to accommodate the needs of a growing segment of our student population who will be served through the Lexington One Online Learning Academy, LULA.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Oswald. And back to Mrs. Gaskins to explain this one.
Absolutely. So this local board approval will allow us to submit an application to the state board for approval that the seat time compliance regulations be waived so that our students in the LULA program can learn on a different schedule than a traditional school schedule. And we were one of the 33 districts who had our online program approved. We found out just today, so we're excited about that.
That's great. Anyone have questions?
I also have a couple of questions about this. These are Kathy's as well. I'm glad I took notes this time. So one of her questions was, how are we keeping a high-quality education for our students if we are waiving seat time? I think, and she followed up with, where are they housing LULA and what type of accountability is in place for teachers? And that's not verbatim. She was just kind of wondering, are we going to be able to ensure, she doesn't want them, and I agree, sitting in front of a computer 6 hours a day, but at the same time, how are we monitoring how much learning time they're getting?
Absolutely. We had a very specific set of criteria from the state that we had to provide evidence against to ensure that we would be doing those things. And so I'm happy to read kind of the list of criteria from the state that we met to ensure that. But our middle school Lula teachers will be at Lexington Middle School, so our 10 teachers will be there. Our middle school students will have more synchronous learning experiences. Our high school students will learn mostly asynchronously, but as part of the state application, we had to provide a schedule that allowed for at least 25% of the instruction of our high school students to be provided in a synchronous way. So our high school teachers are serving in an adjunct status, and so our current high schools are giving up sections to teach in the Lula program. And so those teachers will have a block of time where, you know, it's designated that they are available and can provide individualized and small group support for their students during that time.
Okay. And is that something they volunteer for, or?
Well,
that block?
each school was asked to give up a certain number of sections, and so they worked with their teachers to determine how many of their sections would be face-to-face, how many of their sections would be Lula. And so it was a conversation to make sure all of our classes were covered.
Okay. And where did you say high school was housed at? I know you said middle school. Was it Lexington Middle?
High school, each of our 5 high schools are having teachers teach sections, so those teachers will actually be in their home schools.
Okay, thank you. I was trying to take notes at the same time. Okay.
Sure.
Ms. Garris, is that all?
Yeah, I think that's it for that one.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions for Ms. Gaskins on this, the seat time compliance waiver? All right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The motion carries. Do I hear a motion that the board reinstate the district's normal cumulative end-of-year examination weight of 20% in the final course average for our school year 2021-2022?
Madam Chair, the State Board of Education Regulation 43-262 requires statewide end-of-course examination program, EOCEP, due to COVID-19, Lexington School District One, under the guidance of policy BDH, asked to modify policy IKAA, test and examinations, and the board approved at our November 17th, 2020 board meeting. The district modification temporarily adjusted the cumulative end-of-course examination weight from 20% to 10% in the final course average for the school year 2020-2021. Lexington School District 1 would now like to return to our normal cumulative end-of-the-year examination weight of 20% and the final course average of our school year 2021-2022.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Oswald. And Ms. Gaskins, wow, your first night in that chair, you've got carried the lion's share for this
Having lots of opportunities, yes. So we received a memo in October of 2020 from Molly Spearman saying that during the 2020-2021 school year, schools may choose whether to include the end-of-course test calculations in students' final course grades. And we decreased it from 20% to 10% and decided to hold students harmless. So that was just for 2020-2021. And so in accordance with State Board of Education Regulation 43-262, which requires the statewide EOC exams assessments to be 20% of the student's final grade, we need to go back to our regular policy.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Mrs. Gaskins on this? All right. Board, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And the motion carries. Do I hear a motion that the board temporarily suspend the portion of policy JFAB, admission of non-resident student, that relates to admission of international exchange students due to safety concerns?
Madam Chair, under guidance of policy BDH, which gives the board the right to temporarily suspend board policies due to extreme emergencies, I move that the board approve the administration's request to temporarily suspend the portion of policy JFAB, admission of non-resident student, that relates to admission of international exchange students due to safety concerns. This suspension will be in effect until the end of the 2021-2022 first semester.
Thank you, Mr. Oswald. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. I believe Mr. Caldwell is going to talk us through this recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Little. You may recall last summer, maybe early fall, I brought several policies and am doing so tonight also in light of what we were dealing with last school year and in anticipation of what we may be dealing with this school year, and the uncertainty behind that. The whole concept of international travel still is troublesome to us. And so as the motion read, we are asking that we suspend the acceptance of international students for the first semester. And just for clarity's sake, those are typically year-long placements. Anyway, we rarely have requests for second semester, but if we were to unsuspend this for second semester, it would allow us to accept students for second semester with the understanding that they would not stay for the first semester of the next school year, because then that would take up the slots for the kids. So there's a point where there's some time lost there, but we don't want to totally block out the international students should they have the ability and desire to come second semester if we're able to unsuspend this policy. So,
how many students do we normally host per year? Like 3 years ago, 4 years ago, prior to COVID?
we have our limits are equal to the number of school counselors at each high school, minus the director of guidance at each school. So it's 7 for 20th, maybe 30, 40 across the district.
We historically have filled those?
Just about always, we sure do.
Have we had many requests for this next?
Not many at all, no.
So I have a question. Why are we suspending international students, but we're hiring international teachers?
I'm not in a position to answer that question. I don't know.
Okay. I mean, to me, it just seems like if international travel is troubling to us, as a reason for not allowing international students, then, I mean, we either have to not allow international teachers or we should allow both. And in my opinion, I mean, I think we should allow both.
Okay.
Okay.
Dr. Little or Ms. Price, could you clarify that for us?
So we are obviously hiring international teachers. They're an essential part to our instructional program. A lot of times, especially at this point of the year, we're really struggling to find some of our language positions. You know, usually those teachers they're not going back and forth between countries. They are coming here and locating here to be home for a period of time, depending on their status. But.
So I mean, that she makes another point, that they're coming here to stay and they're not traveling back and forth. So we have staff members and students who have traveled abroad over the summer, possibly even throughout the school year, but there are no restrictions placed on them. So in my opinion, I just don't believe we should limit international students. I just think they should be allowed. So, I mean, we got a motion on the floor.
Yeah.
I guess we could take a vote.
Anyone else have any questions or comments? Any other discussion? And I do think it's a tricky line right now. We're in a tricky time, and it's been an unusual 18 months, 2 years, and navigating the balance is difficult. So
I'll add that, you know, when these foreign exchange students are not able to make the trip here, a lot of the foreign countries are not allowing that travel as well. But it's very unfortunate for that child to miss that wonderful opportunity. But when we don't hire a teacher, many students miss out. So,
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Anyone else? All right. We do have a motion on the floor. So all in favor of temporarily suspending the policy JFAB, admission of non-resident students for the International Exchange Student Program through the first semester, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Jane is opposed.
All right. And I do believe the motion carries 4-1. Thank you. All right. Do I hear a motion that the board temporarily modify the enforcement section of policy JICG, tobacco and nicotine use by students due to safety concerns?
Madam Chair, under the guidance of policy BDH, which gives the board the ability to temporarily suspend board policies due to the extreme emergencies, I move that the board approve the administration's request to temporarily modify the enforcement section of policy JICG, tobacco and nicotine use by students due to safety concerns. The second offense consequence, which requires a student to complete 6 hours of school-based community service, will be temporarily suspended due to safety concerns. This modification will be in effect until the end of the 2021-2022 first semester.
Thank you, Mr. Oswald. Do I have a second? Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Back to you, Mr. Caldwell, to explain this recommendation.
Thank you, and this one has a bit of a twist because we're actually asking to add something back that we suspended last school year, and that is the first offense results in a day of in-school suspension, and the students have to complete a vaping and tobacco education course. And what we asked for last year was that they not stay in in-school suspension the entire day, because if you'll recall, students were only in school 2 days a week, face-to-face instruction 2 days a week. And seat time was critically important. It's important all the time, but certainly last year. And so we asked and were granted the permission to allow them to stay in in-school suspension just for the duration of that course. We're asking to rescind that, I guess, and go back to the 1 day in-school suspension for the first offense. But we're again asking that the school-based community service be postponed temporarily, just until we really want to get into the semester, see what the semester looks like, and what our numbers look like, what our case loads are like, and that sort of thing. So that's what we're asking for.
Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. Does anyone have any questions?
Well, I just have some discussion. This motion is just for the second offense consequence, which requires a student to complete 6 hours of community service. It doesn't have anything to do with the first offense, although I agree with.
Well, to that point, I'm not actually asking for that again, so I guess by virtue of not asking to do that, it automatically goes back to the way it was. So it's
okay.
a good point, yeah.
But, so we want to, I guess, suspend this section of the policy that says students will be required to complete community service at their school. But these are the same students that are attending that school every day. And if they've decided that they want to use tobacco and nicotine, I don't think that we should give them an excuse such as COVID to say that it's okay. That's just my opinion. The board may have another opinion. You break the rules, you suffer the consequences. And I don't think 6 hours community service is a big deal.
Give us an example of school-based community service.
Well, we didn't really have it last year, and I think that policy, if you remember the previous year, we had much conversation about this. In fact, we revised it and then revised it again. I don't want to put Mr. Cooper on the spot, but I just did, as far as the community-based or school-based community service. Do you have any examples that we could?
Typically assigned for the housekeeper, outside of school hours, do some cleaning, things of that nature. Working with school staff there around the school.
So that's even better. It's outside of school hours. So I see no reason why this should be suspended. Like I said, you break the rules, you suffer the consequences. That's just my opinion.
Is there an alternative second offense penalty? Or is there just,
Are we not doing anything for second offense?
If what,
Second offense, is, of course, the student, if the device would be turned over, if the paper, something would be turned over to law enforcement, it would be on law enforcement to whether or not they did decide to pursue the charges against the student. The student would also have to complete the LRADAC tobacco cessation course. They do the in-house school-based course on the first offense. They would do the course through LRADAC on the second offense. And though it might not have another overt consequence other than that administrator-parent conversation, that conversation also is a reminder to the student and the parent, should this happen a third time, that offense includes a recommendation for expulsion. And so, that's a pretty good attention grabber as well for the student and the parent as well.
Also, I know in that policy, it includes, as the second offense, referral to law enforcement and suspension from extracurricular activities, which is great. I think all of these are great, but I just don't see the reason why we need to suspend community service.
How many second offenders do we have in a year, would you say, ballpark, per school? I guess the high schools are the predominant players.
Middle and high. Second offense, I'm given a very broad range, but I would say as a district, I mean, it'd probably be around 100 or so.
For all 5 high schools?
For all 5 high schools and all 8 middle. So, I mean, you're talking,
1 to 2
5
per
to
school.
15 maybe per site students. So not a large number per school.
Is our safety concern related to COVID-19? Is that what we're driving at? Okay, I understand that.
and that's, I'm sorry, that concern is, I'm not sure how that concern is of larger significance than just the general concern during the school day.
I understand, and that's a valid point. We've just, we've been very deliberate with our, as we've gone back to some sense of normalcy, and we just, maybe being too cautious, just opted to recommend that we slow this return by a semester. But certainly, it's at the pleasure of the board. So.
Board? Anyone have any other questions or discussion on this?
But Mr. Caldwell, you're recommending this? You and the district leadership are recommending this?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. All in favor of the motion to temporarily modify the enforcement section of policy GICG, the tobacco and nicotine use by students due to safety concerns. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed?
Jane is opposed.
And the motion carries. All right. Do I hear a motion that the board approve the administration's request to temporarily suspend policy JJIE, student drug testing program, and JJIER, administrative rule, due to safety concerns?
Madam Chair, under the guidance of policy BDH, which gives the board the right to temporarily suspend board policies due to extreme emergencies, I move that the board approve the administration's request to temporarily suspend policy JJIE, student drug testing program, and JJIE-R, administrative rule due to safety concerns. The suspension will be in effect until the end of the 2021-2022 first semester.
Thank you, Mr. Oswald. Do I have a second? Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Mr. Caldwell, would you like to explain this recommendation to us?
I would, thank you. And again, we made this recommendation last year as well. And I think because of the uncertainty of what the fall semester is going to look like, and as we watch our spread rate change throughout the summer and hopefully will decline and not increase, and knowing the amount of volume that it adds to the health rooms when this happens, and we're not sure what the health rooms are going to look like. We certainly hope that we have some pre-COVID look to it, but we just don't know. And again, maybe being overly cautious and maybe a little more deliberate than somewhat necessary, we just ask that we suspend that for that caution, just so we can monitor throughout the first semester to see what our normal traffic looks like in the health rooms and not overtax the nurses or have a very congested, crowded situation.
Thank you. Board, do you have any questions or comments about this recommendation?
I have some comments. I know you had sent me an email, Mr. Caldwell. I printed that on my way out the door. And I appreciate all the work our nurses do. I don't believe that we should put more on them. At the same time, another district, when I was reading those SCASA emails we get, they are using an outside agency. And I know in the email I asked you, have we considered using an outside agency? And you said you had conversations about third party, but remained the concern about the logistics of testing. So I know bus drivers, we use a third party testing agency for them. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay. So as a bus driver, when we had drug tests, when they put us in the school for a while and we worked out of a classroom in there, they just blocked off one bathroom. The lady was stationed inside the bathroom. And when we were called in there, we filled out all our paperwork right at the door. We went in there, were tested. So is that a possibility for student drug testing? So the nurses aren't involved, the nurses' room isn't involved, it's just a restroom in a hallway that's not used?
Well, certainly that's a possibility. That does slow down considerably the process. It is, just as a reminder, and you may remember this is not a urine test, it is a mouth swab test, so we're able to do more than one student at a time. Okay. Because it does become a very time-consuming process, and we want those kids back in class as much as possible. When we first investigated drug testing 5, 6, 7, however many years ago, we actually visited, I think it was Beaufort County, and they were doing the urine sample, and it was a one at a time, and it was about a half-day process. And it really kind of shut things down. So we opted for the mouth swab that we do now, so we can do it in mass, and it does kind of expedite that. To your question, certainly that is a possibility that it could be done that way. It does bring in the additional cost, the unfunded cost of having someone come in and administer that. Our costs now are associated with the actual drug testing kits, and all of the other maintenance of things are done in-house, and there's not an additional cost to that. But certainly that's not impossible what you just recommended. Instead of testing 5 at a time, we test 1 at a time 5 times, and that just slows things down.
Okay. I would personally be interested in even getting a price on what that would cost to use an outside agency, because I believe drug testing is a huge deterrent for our student athletes and our student drivers. And I mean, when I look at this agenda, I'm kind of thinking, wow, are there any consequences left this year? And what exactly is it we're doing here? So for me, I just think that there's another way around. Instead of suspending this part of the policy, I think we just need to find another workaround for implementing that part of the policy.
So, I was finishing my first term and starting my second term when we put this policy in place. So again, we will still do for-cause testing if children are acting erratic or there's suspicion. And we'll search and confiscate and then
absolutely, yes,
involve the right law enforcement. So
that's right.
I think one of the things that we've all been spoiled with in this district is all the wonderful things that we do in addition to educating kids. I do agree with your direction, Dr. Little, that we have got to focus on instruction. And it's not just the teachers, it's the admin teams at the schools, because we have a gap in instruction from COVID, and we have got to close that gap. And we're doing summer programs, which is great, but I do think reducing the moving parts for our school-based teams so they can focus on instruction to get kids fully back at grade level smart. So I'm going to support suspending this policy.
Any other questions or comments, board? All right. Do we have a motion?
I actually do have another question and comment. So, as Dr. Powers just mentioned, he wants as many people, involved in instruction inside school. If we were to use an outside agency, do you have any idea how many people that would take away from instruction? Because I know with bus drivers, even with urine, instead of just swabbing, it was one person. And I mean, then there were no supervisors.
But I think for like students, I think they're escorted to the test.
That's right.
So I think there would be some administrative support. So it would tax the staff to some degree because they would have to go get those students and bring them to the testing
It's the
site.
shutting down of restrooms. It's putting the blue dye in the water. There's all sorts of steps that are taken, and it really seemed to bog down that process. Again, I'm not arguing for or against it. It seemed to be just an hours-long process, and we're trying to make this we want it to be substantial. We want it to be robust, but not such that they're missing, that we're housing kids in the gym and calling them down one at a time, and taking 10, 15, 20 minutes per student. So to answer your question, I don't really remember all the details of how many people it took, but it was established at the school that several people were in charge of checking the restrooms before and after and going through the paperwork and all that sort of thing. But certainly it's something we could investigate. It just didn't seem to be the benefit we were looking for at the time, which is why we went with the mouth swab.
And this recommendation is just for the first semester.
That's correct, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to see some type of investigation such as time, cost, administrative involvement, things of that sort before I actually vote to suspend that part of the policy.
All right, board, we have a motion on the table to approve the administration's request to temporarily suspend policy JJIE, Student Drug Testing Program, and JJIER Administrative Rule due to safety concerns. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Jane is opposed.
All right, and the motion carries. All right. Do I hear a motion that the board authorize the administration to fulfill the request for information as requested by Ms. Garris on June 21st, 2021?
Madam Chair, I move that the board authorize the administration to fulfill the request for information as requested by Mrs. Garris on June 21st, 2021.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Is there a second? Is there a second to the motion?
Can I second this? Okay, I'll make a second.
All right, thank you, Ms. Garris. All right, I'll just give a little bit of background on this. Ms. Garris has requested information and some questions to be answered by the administration, and to fulfill that request will require a significant amount of time and district resources, and so because the board, we act as a body and not as individuals, in order to expend those resources to provide the information that she requested, it warrants a board vote. And so, board, I believe you received information regarding Ms. Garris's request. Ms. Garris, would you like to?
Sure. So we've got an agenda analysis on this, and while the analysis refers to 3 policies, it does not mention the actual policy that explains how board members request information and how those requests are handled. So the one policy that is almost identical to Richland 2's policy that Senator Massey sought the Attorney General's opinion on in April of this year. And it's Senator Massey's belief that the policy was written to circumvent South Carolina Supreme Court's holding in Wilson v. Preston. And his letter includes Justice Beatty's statement that reads in part, in my view, an elected official, by virtue of the office held, has the inherent right of timely access to any and all information possessed by the governmental entity that he or she is duly elected to. To hold otherwise would condone the disenfranchisement of the people the elected official represents. The denial of information would clearly hinder, if not nullify, an elected official in the performance of his duties. So not only have I not received an answer as to the amount of time estimated to produce each request, but I don't think the documents I'm requesting require a significant commitment of staff time and district resources, as the district is claiming. More importantly, I believe that all board members should be asking for and reviewing this information, as we are in the midst of a $365 million bond referendum, where we just approved a budget increase for 2 projects. We have projects that are behind schedule, and we have more budget increases expected. Also, a couple of these items that I've requested in the past, but they've just never been provided. And to be clear, in no way are these unusual items I'm asking for. In surrounding districts, some of the same information is not only provided to the board, but requires board approval before the district can move forward. That information is then posted on the district's website as part of their board packet. Our board has not even laid eyes on some of the most important documents pertaining to the bond referendum. And when I was told that it would take staff a long time to pull all the information I was asking for, I explained how I was very intentional in choosing the items to ask for, and in doing so, I tried to ensure that those were easily accessible and available in electronic format. Then I asked for the amount of time estimated to produce each request, and what items were not available electronically, and what items did not currently exist and would have to be produced. In addition to my request for information, those questions, along with others that could be addressed and answered easily and quickly, as noted in the agenda analysis, have not been answered in more than a month. And while some of the information I requested was more relevant prior to last month's vote to increase the budget for the transportation facility, the information, I believe, is better late than never. Now, the reason I don't think these documents I'm requesting require a significant amount of staff time is because in May, when I asked for a report for legal fees spent out of the Board of Trustees account because I wanted to see when a member of the board was provided legal advice, I was told there's a significant amount of time, work to gather and redact these bills. When I explained that I only requested a report, not invoices, I was told again to pull and redact the invoices is very time-consuming. And while board policy says that the board's authority is granted only to the board acting as a group, that policy isn't applied equally to all members, because less than a week later, the board chair emailed me 7 pages of invoices that were provided when she asked for them, along with an explanation of her reasons for contacting legal counsel. So just as I find it hard to believe that 7 pages of invoices required a significant amount of work and was very time-consuming, as I was told on 2 separate occasions, I also find it hard to believe that my current request for information will take a long time to pull together and require staff to work extra hours. And just so it's noted, during my time on this board, most of my requests for information have been met with resistance. This is clearly personal, it doesn't foster transparency, and it hinders my ability to perform my duties. I don't know of any other board member, not just in this district, but in the state, who has had to file a Freedom of Information request, pay hundreds of dollars out of pocket, and get the Attorney General's opinion just to be provided information that they are legally entitled to. And just so the context is provided as part of the record, I'm requesting that my emails to the board and email exchanges between myself and the operations finance officer be included in the minutes. This doesn't require a board vote, but I just wanted that noted on the record. So does anyone have any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Garris. Mr. Salters, I believe the request was directed to you. Could you shed some light on the time and resources that will be required to provide what Ms. Garris has requested?
I'll be happy to give you my opinion of the time, Ms. Green. Obviously, Ms. Garris has her opinion of the time, and she has a very different opinion of what actually it would take. I'm referencing an email. Your motion was referencing June 21st. The original email was June 16th. It's a 3-page email that comprises a number of questions and comments from Ms. Garris. And in that email, it asked for a number of different things, very detailed. I sat with our staff yesterday, went through the email, and put together timeframes about what it would take to pull this information together, because some of it is in electronic format, some of it is hard copy. Just for example, this is one pay application for 1 month for one job, and you want detailed information about the jobs in the referendum, and so you're going to have one of these for 31, 32 jobs going right now, and you have to gather that information for however many years the job's been going, copy that information and or scan it, depending on what format we need this in. If it's electronic, we scan it. If it's, some of it is already in existence in an electronic format. If it's printed, we have to print it and make copies of it. We have one person in our office who manages our bond program payments and funding and so forth. And it's going to take about a month worth of time to go through this email, gather all of this information into a packet of information that can be then received to the board. Happy to do that. There's no question we're happy to do that. There's never a question as to whether the board should see it, can see it, wants to see it. Not a problem. Happy to sit with any board member and discuss any item within the information. The issue is, this was just but one email. And taken in its context, that's one email. We get emails like this every day. And so this one staff member has a job to do and does that job every day. And so now you're laying this on top of that staff member. Whether you believe it or not, it's a lot of extra work. And we're happy to do it. We just need direction to do it.
So explain to me again what that was you were holding up.
This is a pay application.
Okay, so where in my request did I request a pay application?
If you look at, can you run a detailed report for Centerville that would show all line items for the expenditures related to that job? For example, a report that would show where the $1,385 was spent in April 2021. This is where you would see that.
Okay, so that's similar to a monthly check register, and it's just...
No, ma'am. A monthly check register would show the total of the pay application.
Right.
It would be a check to the vendor, to the contractor for the total amount of money. What you are asking for would be in the detail, how many screws we bought, how many block we bought that month or whatever. That would be in the line item detail of the pay application.
So on our monthly check register, there is that 16 or 13-digit count code over to the side, and that's assigned to, the last 3 digits I think are assigned to the school. Could you not pull that code?
You're going to see this amount of money, the pay application amount. That's not the detail level that you want, according to your email.
Okay, so you couldn't say, when I look on the monthly check register and it says, or our monthly budget report, it says $1,385 to Centerville. You don't have any way of pulling a
You're going to have to
report
tie that back to a pay application.
just
Yes, ma'am.
for Centerville.
Yes, ma'am.
You can't click on that $1,385 and it tells you, here's where that number
It
came from.
doesn't work that way.
Okay, so let's nix that then, until we can find an easier way to get that information. So let's talk about these others, one by one. So the cost of the Gilbert Bus Lot office and paving.
Ms. Garris, I mean,
We can't sit here all night and go through this over and over and over.
So we
and
can't
over.
talk about how much time each of these requests are going to take
I think you've taken
because-
up enough of their time.
well, and I mean, the staff member that would be required to do this instead of their daily duties, approximately for a week, how much would it cost for that staff member to just focus on pulling this information for a week?
Approximately for a week would be about $1,250
Okay, so like I
of
said,
salary.
we're going to take out that one request because obviously that was the most burdensome one. And I don't understand how there's not an easier way, but okay.
But Ms. Garris, I mean, and this is,
I mean, I appreciate your perspective, I really do, but then I also understand intimately the reality of how these documents come to us, where they're stored, and how the system, our Business Plus financial system works.
Well,
So
and
that's what we're driving this off of.
and I'm sorry, Mr. Salters, but, I mean, we have, as a board, our responsibility is to supervise and evaluate the superintendent. And his job is to supervise and evaluate his staff. And we hold him accountable for making sure that day-to-day operations and expenditures and things like that are done properly and well. And I think time and again, our audits, our credit rating, every review that we are subjected to by external bodies comes out with an A++. And so clearly we do it well and we do it right. And with recent exceptions because of some unexpected changes, we've had a couple projects that we had to add money to. But routinely, our projects come in under budget. And I think that's a credit to the way our staff is managed. But it is our responsibility as the board to hold Dr. Little responsible for making sure that these projects are managed well. As a board, I don't think we're supposed to look at a 400-page document line by line. That's not our responsibility. That we hold the superintendent responsible for that. And then if something goes wrong, we deal with him and he deals with his staff. That governance is not getting down into the very, very, very fine details, because there are things on those documents that require master's in engineering degrees, or you have to understand how foundation work is constructed, or electrical expenses. I'm not a construction expert, and so to look at that documentation and to look at those costs and I know very well that Mr. Salters and Mr. Warren and their staff, they negotiate extremely frugally on behalf of the taxpayers in our district. And so I'm not sure what is served by trying to get that level of detailed information.
Okay, well, that's why I sent the board an email and explained what is served by getting that detailed level of information. And I can go over that again if you'd like, but as Mr. Anderson said, he thinks I've taken up enough of your time. But a couple of things that you just touched on. So I don't need to know about electrical and construction. If you look at these items I'm asking for, that's not what this is. This all has to do with budget. And like you said, there's recent exceptions with unexpected changes. Well, had the board been on top of this, we would have seen those coming. Or had we been provided the paperwork that was provided to the Department of Education that a citizen sent us, that the district knew in January that this transportation facility was $6.5 million over budget, but we were only told in May, and then in June.
But Ms. Garris, the administration has explained to us that during that time they were trying to value engineer it to get it more in line with what they eventually presented to us.
Exact price.
And I mean, really, a $1,300 line item is extremely important. $1,300 is a significant amount of money, but in the scope of a $365 million bond project, we need to leave that to the folks that do this.
We can leave it to them. I
24/7
just
for
want to
20
be able to
years.
track it. And as it stands right now, we cannot do that. And you said it's not our job
Ms.
to look
Garris,
at.
you get a
not our
budget to
job.
actual report every month for the bond referendum program
one
that gives you a
page.
percentage of expenditures to the budget. So
It's
you
one
do
page.
get the ability to track the overall progress of the budget and the program.
It's one page for $365 million worth of projects. And I had a couple things. You said that it's not our job to look at a 400-page document line by line. Well, then I don't know why we're presented the comprehensive annual financial report each year if they don't expect us to read that line by line.
But that is our responsibility, because that is a report that is delivered to us, because that's high-level governance.
So you don't think we should be overseeing this bond referendum? We should, when there's overages, we should
That's
just
not
approve
what the
them?
chair is saying. What the chair is saying is that anyone in business that's working now, I just left the hospital planning committee, that's why I was late. We are talking about construction costs that are higher than expected right now. Anyone who's running a business is talking about that. That has nothing to do with the school district, it has nothing to do with planning. It has everything to do with the reality of building today.
But that
So-
has nothing to do with why we're over budget on these two projects. It has nothing to do with the cost of construction. One was a scope disconnect, and the other was the amount just wasn't included in the budget to begin with.
Madam Chair, I move we close the conversation.
Thank you. All right. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
No. This is an
Okay.
aye vote is to
For-
grant the request.
That's right, I thought we were, okay.
Would you please restate the motion?
Madam Chair, I move the board authorize the administration to fulfill the request for information as requested by Ms. Garris on June 21st, 2021.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
And the motion is defeated. All right, moving on to 10.0, Superintendent's Report. Dr. Little.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before we get started, I do want to just note that tonight is the first meeting of many of our new senior leadership team members, and we just wanted to recognize them and let them know we are glad to have them. So again, as just an introduction to the community, we have Mrs. Devonna Price, who is our new Chief Human Resources Officer, Ms. Mary Gaskins, who is our new Chief Academic Officer, Dr. Thomas Rivers, who is our new Chief Innovation and Technology Officer, or Chief Technology and Innovation Officer. Sometimes mix those up. 1, 2, 3. And Ms. Catherine McPhail, who is our new Director of Communications. So welcome for the new team. And again, we are glad to have you and excited for what lies ahead. So I just wanted to give the board a brief update on our back-to-school plan. On July the 6th, we did receive guidance regarding the Proviso 1.108 from the South Carolina Department of Education, and we immediately implemented the advice internally that dealt with school buses and staff and masking associated with that proviso. And then what we did was, from that advice, we then went to our plan online, removed all language regarding the tiered masking approach. And at this time, throughout the 21-22 school year, masks will be optional for students and staff unless otherwise directed by the South Carolina Department of Education, the governor's office, or another authorized state agency to make masking required in some form or fashion. We also removed the language requiring students and staff wearing masks in health rooms and buses. And we revised the language about the time frame for making procedural shifts at the community spread, where we did the tier approach of the community spread at moderate in the modifying facilities to allow for physical distancing section. We changed it from 3 consecutive weeks to 14 consecutive days. Since DHEC is updating and communicating community spread levels daily rather than weekly. So that was a bit of a change from our original thing. So that plan, as my understanding, has been updated and is now on the website. And so we've made those changes to our back-to-school plan and resubmitted those changes to the South Carolina Department of Education and made them aware of that. Next on the list, I'd like to turn it over to Jessica Bizard, for our early childhood and Title I coordinator, as well as Dr. Shane Phillips. And what they're going to walk through is they're going to walk through our academic recovery plan, as well where we are with our ESSER 3 funding planning, and I think some important dates coming up. So Dr. Phillips, take it over.
And today is Dr. Phillips' birthday, so happy birthday.
Saturday.
Saturday. Well,
I'm still
you're
in my
celebrating
40s.
all week, right?
I'm still in my 40s till Saturday.
Till Saturday.
We're going to go with that.
Embrace it, man.
Although this is my first board meeting where I've had to wear my glasses because I can't read. So,
Dr. Phillips, it is downhill from here.
that's what I understand. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Little. Tonight I am presenting to you our academic recovery plan. I'll be briefly sharing the development process and a general overview of the plan that was approved by the South Carolina Department of Education on July 16th. On March 11th, 2021, the American Rescue Plan Act was signed into law, providing funding to schools. South Carolina will receive of that money $2.1 billion in ESSER funds. Of that $2 billion, Lexington District One will receive just under $27.3 million. These funds must be used between now and 2023. So 2 plans are required to be submitted as part of ESSER 3.
Hang on a second, Dr. Phillips. Can we do something about that feedback? Anybody?
What did I do?
Now that I've said something about it, probably won't have feedback again, but I just want to make sure.
Can y'all still hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so 2 plans are required to be submitted as part of ESSER 3. The return to in-person instruction and continuity of services plan presented last time we met by Dr. Natalie Smith, and the academic recovery plan, which I'm presenting to you tonight. Those are both part of that required process. So the SCDE required that the district set measurable goals in this plan for accelerating growth and achievement for students in ELA and math. Other goal areas could be included, and there was no limit to the number of goals that could be developed. These goals needed to be focused on moving students to or beyond grade level expectations, given the fact that we had these gaps that developed during COVID. These goals needed to be differentiated by grade bands or grade levels based on the specific impact of the pandemic. They could be broad or narrow in scope. And as I mentioned before, we could also identify goals in non-academic areas as well. In addition to the goals, districts needed to include strategies for attaining the goals, information about how the goal addressed learning lag, a timeline for each goal, an evaluation plan, and funding sources. A draft of the plan was submitted at the end of May, and a revised copy based on feedback from the department was submitted on July 1st. So in developing this plan, we gathered and analyzed data from several sources. First, we looked at feedback that we had received from our Teacher Leadership Council throughout the entirety of the year. The purpose of gathering this feedback was all along to collect lessons learned over the course of the past year. We needed to know, from a teacher's perspective, what was working and what wasn't working in the area of instruction. We also reached out to our school leaders to get their input on the most critical needs regarding the academic recovery of our students. We looked at historical, state, and local test data, including data provided by the SCDE that showed gaps between current student achievement and predicted or anticipated achievement that those students would have made in a normal year. We spoke with content area coordinators about the needs that they saw with regard to instruction. And then the goals in this plan were developed from the marriage of all these findings from all these data sources. So here's what we found. First, our lessons learned from the Teacher Leadership Council suggested that there were 3 strategies related to the academic recovery plan that needed attention. High-quality instructional strategies, the use of time in the school day, and the social emotional well-being of our students and staff. While we have some academic need across the board that will be addressed, there were some areas that stood out. First was early literacy. Let me go back here. First was early literacy, reading and writing instruction in grades K through 3. There was substantial need in this area with our students with IEPs and our English language learners in particular. The second area was in middle school mathematics, where we saw some substantial declines and gaps between current and anticipated performance. Based on these findings, we developed 4 goals for the plan. So the first goal, goal 1, is focused on the early literacy needs that were identified. For this goal, we wanted to make sure that 2 things happened. On the interim assessments that we will be using to measure this goal, each student has a growth target based on where they score initially and the typical amount of growth a student who starts at that point makes. The first thing we would like to see is that more than half of students would meet that growth target. And secondly, that in the aggregate, they are not only meeting the growth target, but exceeding the target such that they are moving ahead of schedule to make up ground. And that is what this goal says in sort of statistical language. But let me give you a quick example of how this works. If we pretend that we have a group of 3 students who take the test in the fall, let's say that all of them have the same growth target of 10 points. In the spring, the actual growth values for the 3 students are 7 points, 11 points, and 12 points. 2 of the 3 students met or exceeded the growth target in this scenario. So the first criteria of this goal would be satisfied, the more than 50%. meeting their growth target. To determine the percent of the target growth met, we just compare their actual growth to the target. The first student got 7 out of 10 points, or 70% of the target. The second student got 11 out of 10, or 110% of the target. The third student got 12 out of 10, or 120% of the target. If we look at the median of those values, we find that it is 110%, so the second criteria of the goal is also satisfied. We have another goal that's very much like this. I promise I'm not going to explain it twice. So if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them about this methodology. Here are just a few of the strategies that we will use to achieve the first goal. Many of the strategies named in the plan came from the TLC lessons learned analysis and feedback from principals. So I'll let you look at these and just highlight some things that are going to come up later. First is strategies to reduce class size. And then, again, some focus on some of our higher need populations, which we'll talk about later as well. Goal 2 is related to the middle school math finding, and the methodology is the same as for Goal 1. Again, it is important that not only are students meeting the goal, but also gaining ground toward where they should be. Again, here are some sampling of strategies that we'll be implementing to achieve improvement in middle school math. And again, at the top of that list is reducing class size, and then looking at some of our instructional strategies specific to math and professional learning for teachers. Goal 3 is about identifying and addressing instructional gaps in grades K through 12 in both ELA and math. With the end-of-year state test results and fall interim assessments, we will have a clearer picture of where gaps exist at the standard and indicator level. If you recall, we've had a serious lack of that data due to COVID. And so now we're getting that data back in, which gives us some more detailed information in a standardized format about how students are doing on those subjects. Once we have that information, our content coordinators can work with teachers to address those gaps effectively and efficiently. Here are some of the strategies that we're going to use to address Goal 3. And so these include using multiple measures to take a look at those content and skill gaps, and then working with teachers to embed support for those missing contents and skills. Goal 4 is related to the social emotional learning needs identified in our lessons learned. In this goal, we will seek to identify specific growth areas regarding social emotional learning and develop strategies to address those areas. And here are some of the strategies for Goal 4. These include the implementation of a new social emotional learning screener and the establishment of social emotional learning monitoring and support teams. So in preparation for the budget planning process for ESSER funds, we surveyed several groups of people. We surveyed advisory groups, parents, and staff about their priorities in spending the allocation in general, as well as their priorities for addressing learning loss specifically. The following slides will show the data resulting from that survey. So these are the things that were most important, second most important, and third most important to our advisory groups. So you'll see some commonalities as we go through these different groups. Most important here for the advisory was highly vulnerable populations, so those students who are disadvantaged or hindered in some way. The second being addressing learning loss due to COVID, and the third being mental health services for students and staff. So that was the advisory groups. The parents the first two were just flipped, right? So addressing learning loss was the most important. It was also the second most important, but if we go down to one that hadn't already been mentioned, that was highly vulnerable populations, okay, as their second most important. And then their third most important was technology. And then our staff, again, their top priority was the highly vulnerable populations, and then addressing learning loss as the second priority. And the third was improving air quality. So when we looked then at the learning loss priorities, so how should we spend the money to address learning loss? Here were how their responses stacked up. So I think I'm just going to go through these very quickly and show you a commonality here. If you'll look here on this one, the top one with more than a quarter of responses was reduced class sizes in grades K through 8. Parents said the same thing, and staff said the same thing. If we go back to advisory, addition of instructional support staff, for example, highly qualified instructional assistants and substitute teachers was second for advisory. It was third for parents, and for staff, it was second. So we see the same really high priorities here. So the top three in general were reduced class sizes, additional academic assistance during the school day, addition of instructional support staff. And then they varied a little bit throughout the lower ones there. So I'll let you take a look at each of these briefly. And then there's the staff. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Bizard, who's going to talk to you about the budget planning process that we went through.
Good evening. I'm going to share with you information regarding the budget planning process that we are currently engaging in to determine priorities for ESSER 3 spending. So initially, we began this process by sharing information about the ESSER 3 grant with principals and district leaders. Part of that was how to make a budget request for ESSER 3. So you'll see here that budget requests have several requirements. To be considered for ESSER 3 funding, requests must align to one of the 15 allowable categories for ESSER that are set forth by the grant. All requests must also be aligned to one of two plans, either the Safe Return to In-Person plan that Dr. Osborne Smith has shared with you previously, or the Academic Recovery plan that Dr. Phillips has just shared with you. Another requirement of a budget request is an evaluation plan to show how the project will be assessed when implemented. So once all budget requests were received from schools and departments, a committee made up of various departments and levels reviewed each request to determine if all of the requirements were met. Feedback, as you have just seen from Dr. Phillips, has been shared from the community. And then we are also meeting again with advisory groups beginning next week to gather additional feedback on the budget priorities. All of these data points, including the feasibility of an exit plan for each priority in 2024, which is when the grant expires, September 30th of 2024, and then also considering the current HR impact, all of those pieces of the puzzle will be used to determine what projects will be funded by ESSER 3. We plan to provide an update to you all, the board, on the ESSER 3 budget priorities at the August 17th board meeting. And then the actual plan for ESSER 3 is due to the State Department by August 24th, 2021. So it's a fast and furious timeline. All right, and at this time, Dr. Phillips and I are happy to answer any questions that you all might have.
Just a thought, a suggestion. Obviously not an educator by training, but for that goal 1, the early literacy, I would enjoy seeing some type of parent engagement for y'all to consider. As we know, these kids obviously listen and, really respond to their parents. As a father of teenagers, I've lost that. But I think arming our parents to help read at home and giving them tools, and again, with Dr. Rivers' advent in our executive team, I'd love, tools that parents off their phone or something, because everyone has a phone, no matter what your socioeconomic status, can help read to their kids. So with that goal 1. And then goal 2, the mathematics gap in middle school, I think that really lends itself to a very strong technology solution. Those kids love to play games. They love to get tokens. I mean, there's all kinds of things which y'all already do, but something in that area in the plan. So, and then the tutoring, I love. There's a lot of high school students that need extra money. And again, we got to be careful about labor laws and, whatever is appropriate, but creating an internal market for either retired teachers or students to do peer-to-peer tutoring, I think is pretty powerful.
You will, I was going to say, you will be happy to know that under Goal 1, the early literacy, part of that goal is to design a comprehensive family and community literacy initiative, which wasn't included as the examples.
Those were just a few examples
Right.
of what we included.
And I'd encourage you to continue to toe the line as far as teacher-student ratios, and let's really try to hold that to what we're trying to do, because that's going to be the biggest bang for the buck.
Absolutely. Any other questions? Thank you. We appreciate your time.
As we move on, I'd like to also turn it back over to Miss Mary Gaskin. She is baptism here, her first time out, but she's going to speak to us again about our collaborative planning days. Ms. Gaskins.
And I would like to add one comment based on the academic recovery plan. It was approved by the state on July 16th, so we were really happy to get that approval. In terms of the collaborative planning dates for next year, it seems like we're having a little bit of a glimpse of normalcy to be able to add our early release days collaborative planning dates back to the calendar, and so we're going to be able to have 5 collaborative planning dates next year, and you can see the release times here, 3 in the fall and 2 in the spring. And I think we learned last year just how important it is to protect the professional learning and collaboration time of our teachers. And now more than ever, we really have some systems in place to use that time very wisely, and I'm excited to be able to put those dates back in the calendar. Happy to answer any questions.
I do know teachers really missed those. I think that this will be a nice little tool back in their tool belts. So,
agreed.
All right, thank you very much. It's my pleasure tonight to introduce Mr. Matt Warren, who will be making his debut operations update tonight. So we're glad to have Mr. Warren. It's a first for many tonight.
Dr. Little, I'd like to take just a moment to not only thank the district, but thank Matt Warren. On July 3rd, we were able to have a reunion of sorts at the old Gilbert High School campus, and we had some 550 plus folks that showed up. It was a happy time, reminiscing, and it was a tour, but there was really no tour guide. Everybody just did their own thing. But we saw people, we hadn't seen. I saw my high school chemistry and biology teacher, which was great. I mean, we saw faculty members.
Must be 635.
I was getting ready to say the same thing. How old is he?
No love. I'll hold him while you beat on him.
Okay. But anyway.
Did he discover something magic when he was doing chemistry?
He did. I got called out for popping popcorn on a Brunson burner in his class. Anyway, thank you, Matt. He spent his whole Saturday, beginning to end, opening up all 97 doors on that campus. I noticed 97 doors because I worked there for 20 years.
Yes, sir.
But thank you, Matt. Appreciate that. It was a time well spent, and we appreciate y'all making that happen.
Thank you. My pleasure. Real quick, just want to open it up and just talk about what we have going on this summer in operations with our operations update. Obviously, the summer is a very busy time of year in operations, specifically in facilities. So, going to open it up with Lakeside Middle School. You see here, we are rolling right along at Lakeside. Pretty much all the roofing is complete in the main building. You see, as a reference, right there to your right, that's the block work is complete for the gym and auditorium is complete. We'll be, right now we're rolling with roof deck on the orchestra and band rooms over there. So that roof will be going on here before too long with the bar joist and all. Another shot from overhead, you see once again, it's looking like a school. Getting pretty close there with that facility. Very excited about this replacement school for Lexington Middle. Met with Mr. Calhoun some last week and began planning other things for the school. So it's becoming a reality very quickly for us, and we're very excited about it. Another overhead shot here, the bar joist that we talked about. This is the fine arts edition that you're looking at, the theater. You see the bar joist going on there at the orchestra and band rooms, and the roof back there in the music rooms is complete. So this photo here is a reference for the underground detention that's pretty much complete on the athletic side of campus. All the underground stormwater on the school side has been done for a while, and this is showing that we're pretty close to being completed with the storm detention on the athletic side at Lakeside. Shot of the front entrance here. You see it's, it looks done outside of some site work, and obviously the parent loop that'll be in front there. You see the foundations are complete for the canopy that'll be out in front of the school. You see the brick and the Nietzsche High down there towards the end. Stands out really nicely. Excited about the look of this school and how it's going to appear, especially out there in front with parents and students showing up. Inside the school, this is obviously, as you guys know, you've heard several times, a prototype for our middle schools, much like Beechwood and Pillion Middle School. You see looking down here at the Learning Commons right in there, and all the natural light coming in. It's going to be a very, very attractive facility, especially in that common space. Shot here of the roof and the bar joist, and then the roof deck down near the cafeteria. Classroom, this is a standard classroom at Lakeside. You see the teaching wall here to your left, where the TV monitor will be. That'll be the teaching wall. It won't be long before we see VCT in there, and the ceiling gets dropped. Cafeteria space come along very nicely. You see the stage there, and also the 4 serving lines for the cafeteria. Once again, lots of natural light coming in this facility, and it's going to be a great space for students and staff. The kitchen looking out, all the tile is complete. It's covered up right now with plywood to protect it during construction, but that space is looking really nice. Looking down one of the academic hallways here, you see, flooring's in. We got ceiling going in here very soon. Okay, so if you've been down Old Cherokee in the last couple of weeks, you may have noticed we have begun that project. We've worked very closely with neighbors in the Palmetto Hall subdivision, Cherokee Trail, Cherokee Village, right across from Lakeside. We've been in communication with them, with business owners along Old Cherokee, other homeowners along Old Cherokee. working very closely, addressing their questions, addressing their concerns, just working with them, making sure they know what's happening, when it's happening. So just a few photos here of the clearing that has begun. Once again, we are widening Old Cherokee from number 6 to intersect with the work the town is doing at Pilgrim Church Road. So a few photos of the clearing that our contractor has started there. White Knoll High School, 32 classroom addition is nearing completion. Another, obviously, project we're very excited about. The principal there, Mr. Daltrey, is thrilled and ready to get in there and get to work. Final inspection on White Knoll High School is next week, so we will have occupancy next week. It's a substantial completion. Another photo of the exterior here. See how it just is completed. Inside the space, see the hard tile there. Contractors putting in work, putting on some final touches, getting that ready for the final inspection. Moving to the performing arts.
Mr. Warren, may I interrupt just a
Sure,
moment? So
sure.
Board, if you haven't spoken to Ms. Halliday yet, please do so. We're trying to determine when to do a ribbon cutting for that building, about either lining it up with the Pillion Middle School ribbon cutting or at a different time. So please make sure you give her that feedback if you haven't already.
Moving to the performing arts side, you see that the bar joists are going in. Block work and brickwork is moving along. Overhead shot of the roof deck at the performing arts addition. Another shot of the bar joist, and then looking out from the proscenium opening there, going out into the theater. This is backstage here looking out. Once
Mr.
again,
Warner,
much like
are we still having problems getting the bar joist? I know we were for a while there.
our contractors have done a really good job. They've and they kind of saw that coming, and they got a jump start on that. So we're tracking very well with materials for this project and others. Moving to Gilbert High School, Performing Arts Center addition, along with the weight room and wrestling room. See here with the orchestra pit at the Performing Arts addition. Block work here is nearing completion. We'll begin steel at Gilbert here very soon. Another project, once again, all of them are exciting. This one especially for the Gilbert community, to see that work going on and see those walls coming up is really, getting some excitement in that community about the finished product. Moving to Lake Murray Elementary School, once again, we got a lot going on this summer. Like I said, it's a short summer, but it's a very busy summer for us and for our guys in facilities. Re-roofing, 3 wings, the B, C, and D wings at Lake Murray Elementary, also HVAC replacements going on there. We actually have 2 roofers working simultaneously here to get this project completed. And you see, some photos of the work they've done so far. And I was out there today, and they're rolling. Even in the rain, they're finding ways to get work done. The HVAC replacement at Lake Murray has come along as well. You see the units here in the hallway, ready to go into rooms and get set up and get working. Lexington Elementary School, we are doing sports floor here, much like we've done at other elementary schools. There was carpet in there, and that's being replaced with the sports floor. That's going to be, very, very friendly for our students and staff in there to play and have PE class and basketball and everything else that they do in those spaces. Carpet and lighting replacement right now as we speak, or tomorrow they'll be back in there again. We're getting new carpet in the library, also replacing lighting and lighting fixtures throughout the school. The final inspection here the 1st of August, so a couple of weeks, and we'll have another completed project ready for students and staff. Oak Grove Elementary, lighting, ceiling install, light fixture replacement. We've already had 1 overhead inspection. Another one will be, once again, that's kind of a theme here, 1st of August. We'll have a lot of inspections, a lot of finals, a lot of substantially complete projects to be ready for students and ready for staff. River Bluff High School, We are actively working there with the canopy connection on the breezeway between the student parking lot and Lower C Hall. You see footings being installed here, and that canopy will be, connected to the building for student use. This leads out to the student parking lot, to C Hall. White Knoll Elementary School, another addition that we've already gained substantial completion for the addition. It's already furnished. Walked that facility several times already with the new principal there, Ms. Wisnett. She's ready to occupy that space and put it to work with four classrooms, 4 kindergarten classrooms that are, like I said, furnished and ready for students and staff. And last, we have White Knoll Middle School. You see the footings here complete for the canopy here at the bus drive right across from the new parking lot we did last summer and last school year. So that canopy is being installed now, so it should be completed here very soon. You'll see, pictures of that next time. As always, you can track the building plan on our website to learn more about where we are and see updated photos of all of our projects. So, any questions?
I just have to comment, you kind of get in your head that, everybody takes the summer off. But between all these projects and the 27 camps that are taking place, academic opportunities that are taking place around the district for students, y'all have, this district has just kept humming right along throughout the summer.
It's probably been one of our busiest summers ever, especially with the short nature of it because of the June 9th, last day of school. But our folks have really done a tremendous job in getting things ready to go, and we're going to be ready to go for August the 17th, which I guess I should whisper that. It makes it slow down a little bit, but it's right around the corner, a month to go. Very excited about it.
Well, we'd be remiss to not say there is a lot of construction, as we're all aware, and that doesn't happen by accident. So thank you, Mr. Warren, for you and your team. You'll do a great job.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, Madam Chair, I'm finished.
Thank you, Dr. Little. All right, moving on to new business. Would anyone mind if we took a quick, 2-minute recess just to take a potty break and then come right back? 2 minutes. Go fast.
father, mother-in-law, retired in administration, I really haven't been involved until Sorry about that.
All right, thank you very much for indulging a quick break. Okay, we are moving on to 11.0, which is new business. And 11.1 is the first reading of policy BBAAR, Board Member Authority and Responsibilities. And that is going to be introduced by Ms. Catherine McPhail.
Yes, thank you, Board Chair and Board. As you may know, the district currently has no BBAAR, which does include information about board authority. So in your packet, you will see that we've included a courtesy copy of the existing policy, as well as a red line copy of South Carolina School Board Association's model policy with some recommended changes. The changes are specifically to the section about requesting additions of items to the board meeting agendas. And if you would like to review that, and I'm happy to answer any questions if I can.
Does anyone have any questions? I know there has been some conversation among board members about that several of us really liked how the ad hoc committee went with the previous policy that we were addressing, and there was some discussion about adopting this or referring this to an ad hoc committee. Ms. McPhail, is our current BBAA, is it consistent with the School Board Association's model policy? We're just missing the administrative rule, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, I believe that's right.
Okay. Board, is there any interest in referring the administrative rule to an ad hoc committee, or would you like to look at this first reading of it and maybe come back next month, and if there's some questions or work that needs to be done to it, referring it to a committee at that time? What is the will of the board?
Yeah, I think that'd be a good idea.
Everybody want to just take the first reading and have a chance to look at it, because it is just the administrative rule, not just it is the administrative rule to accompany an existing policy. So it may be that we want to address them both at the same time, but I think that might require the board to spend some time looking at this for a few weeks. Anyone?
Well, I'm making a motion that we table this until we have Kathy and Kyle here, and don't take any action on it. Maybe just even table first reading.
Just table the first reading until our August meeting?
Yes.
Is it?
I'll second that.
All right. Motion to table this meeting. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, and the motion carries. Thank you, Ms. McPhail. All right, 11.2, which is the first reading of the 2022-2023 academic calendar with Mr. Clark Cooper. I can't believe we're talking about 2022-2023 already, so take it away.
23 academic school calendar. You will remember that this past winter, I brought before you the 2021-2022 academic calendar, which was approved, and immediately after getting your approval on that, the calendar committee jumped right into the 22-23 calendar preparations. We try to have the calendars for Lexington One out, a year in advance. It helps with planning for families, also helps with planning for the operations of the school. And so we did, move forward on the good steam we had moving ahead with the 21-22 calendar's approval, and built upon that. We had taken and gotten feedback from Parent Advisory Council in February of 21. So coupled that with the survey results that we had done in 2019, and using as a baseline the guide, the 21-22 calendar, developed and got feedback on recommendations for the 22-23 calendar. In doing that, I think we've developed a calendar that's in your packet that is, first and foremost, it's academically sound, it's responsive to the needs of our students and our staff, and it supports families as well. In this calendar, you will see that it is a balanced calendar. It is a 91-89 day semester calendar. It observes a traditional start date after the third Monday in August. The semesters switch at the Martin Luther King holiday break. Each month there is a break for students. It has traditional holiday times observed, some things that our community expects and appreciates, like that Wednesday before Thanksgiving and the solid chunks of time around Christmas and Easter. It also has, which we did have discussion on this past year, the virtual weather makeup days in it. So just like the 21-22 calendar, this calendar we expect to, should we have a day that we have to close the school buildings, we would move on with instruction virtually that day. The weather makeup day that is in the calendar as a placeholder day, because we're required to include 3 of those by law, that would be a holiday for students and for staff in the event of an extreme natural disaster where we could not hold virtual instruction, or if there was a great expansive period of time such that multiple days were encumbered by lack of power and not able to teach virtually, then we would then use those weather makeup days as virtual instruction days on the placeholder themselves. So we will be continuing with that this year. And the calendar ends for students and staff the week of Memorial Day. So those are the high points of it. I'll walk you through the calendar at this time. And so if you do look at the calendar that's in your packet, you'll see that this is the 180 instructional days and the 190 days for teachers that are displayed on this calendar. So teachers would return back to school on August the 8th for that complete week, and then also that Monday, August 15th, with 6 pre-service days. School would begin for students on August the 16th on a Tuesday, a little shorter week for our youngest learners. There are 12 instructional days in August. We'd move into September. Labor Day is there as a holiday for students and staff, and there are 21 instructional days. We then move into October, and you'll see October 7th is a parent-teacher conference day, teacher work day, so there'll be no students that day. The first quarter ends on October 20th. It's a 46-day first 9 weeks. And then we finish out the month with 20 instructional days in October. We would then move into November. 2022 is a
is a big election year, so you'll see Election Day as a holiday for students and staff, so folks can get out and vote, and also because many of our school buildings are traditionally serve as polling places. And you'll see that Thanksgiving break is also observed with a three-day holiday adjacent to the weekend, with 18 instructional days during the month of November. We then move into December with 12 instructional days, and you'll see 2 full weeks for the Christmas break. Christmas and New Year's fall on Sunday this year, so that is a little bit of an item to note, because the New Year's Day observed for federal employees falls on January the 2nd. So on January the 2nd, you will see that that is a day that we have made the first virtual weather makeup day. So if we haven't, if we have not had to close down the buildings and not be able to offer virtual instruction on that day will be a holiday for our students and our staff. We'll finish with 8 days in January to wrap up the second quarter, to wrap up the first semester. The 13th of January is a teacher workday for grading and for, with 4 of our 5 high schools preparing for new students in a new semester with new students coming to them. That is adjacent to January 16th on that Monday, which would be the Martin Luther King holiday, and then we will begin second semester on January the 17th. There are 11 additional instructional days that month. We move into February, and you will see there we do have February 17th as a parent-teacher conference day and no school for students. And again, on the other side of the weekend, that Monday would be our second weather makeup day placeholder, which would be a holiday for students and staff as long as it was not needed for virtual instruction. 18 instructional days in February, taking us into March. Again, after a couple weeks, you see another break. Those periodic breaks are important for the students, important for the staff as well, and important for families, for travel and for trips. March the 17th would be the third virtual weather makeup day. And so again, I don't know, I'm repeating myself, but if not needed for virtual instruction, holiday for students and for staff. The third quarter does end that month on March the 23rd, and we finish out the month with a total of 22 instructional days. We move into April, and you will see that first full week of April being our spring break. Easter is on Sunday, March the 9th, so this does allow for Good Friday to be off. That's always important to many people in this community, so we want to be responsive to that, and then also provide that break at a good time. And you have a full week for spring break. 15 instructional days that month. We have a little bit of a long haul as we finish out the month of April and move into May. A lot of testing is involved during that time, so it's not real conducive to breaks for students or staff, just due to the nature of standardized testing, but we do have Memorial Day off for students and staff on the 29th. They both return on Tuesday the 30th. The students would finish up their last day, being Thursday, June the 1st. Staff would have 1 additional day to complete the requirements for wrapping up the school year on Friday, June the 2nd, and everyone would begin their summer break. So that's a quick walk through the calendar. Be happy to answer any questions that you have at this time.
Mr. Cooper, this looks really nice. I know there's actually a lot of work that goes into putting this calendar together. There's so many different things that you have to consider, and I know this was not in your consideration, but this academic year represents my youngest child's senior year, and he'll be happy to see that not only is school done on June 1st, but you gave him his 18th birthday off as well during the school year.
Well-
And so just from my family to yours, thank you very much for
We
that.
aim to please.
So, Mr. Cooper, thank you for this. Has this gone through the calendar committee, or is it planned on going through there?
Yes, ma'am, this is
Okay.
the recommendation of the calendar committee,
Okay,
yes.
I just didn't see that. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am.
Board, any other comments or questions for Mr. Cooper? No? All right, thank you very much. All right, 11.3, super evaluation tool. And this, we have a guest tonight, Mr. Alan Smith with Halligan, Mahoney and Williams. He is our, the district's employment attorney. And I believe he's going to facilitate the introduction of this and the conversation of that. Is that? Thank you, Mr. Smith. If you want to use the podium, that would be terrific.
And I'm glad to be here this evening. Evaluating the superintendent is one of the important functions that you as a board do. And superintendent evaluations around South Carolina have gone through an evolutionary process over the years. Many years ago, superintendents were evaluated throughout the state with written formal instruments, evaluation instruments. And then over the years, the process evaluated. There was some interest on some parts of the state to encourage open, candid, and frank discussions among board members without putting everything into a formal written instrument. And so the process began to swing to a different sort of verbal process. And that's the process that was written into Dr. Little's contract when he was hired here in 2016. The process of establishment of goals, the preparation of a narrative 3 weeks prior to the evaluation meeting, a meeting where you have a discussion among board members about the evaluation, and that's followed up with a written summary that's prepared and presented to the superintendent and released to the public. That's been the process in this district as well as in many other districts in South Carolina for many years. The pendulum has started swinging back in some parts of the state to the more formal instrument-driven, data-driven evaluation instrument. And so Anne Marie Green, your board chair, has had some interest as well as some other board members in considering a move back to that type of a process. And so your board chair has invested a considerable amount of time in putting together an instrument that could be used for that purpose. Now, the contract is in effect between the board and Dr. Little for now that requires the old process. So my understanding is that the thought is that if the board is comfortable with modifying and making the evaluation more quantitative and more data-driven, the plan would be for next year to revise the superintendent's contract to make a move to this new evaluation instrument beginning next year. Is that correct?
And I'll just add, I think, based on some conversations that I had with members of the board during the spring, there was interest among board members, in addition to myself, of moving towards this more quantitative, instrument-driven evaluation, like Mr. Smith said. And because Mr. Smith, Dr. Little and I talked, and then I reached out to Mr. Smith because he facilitates superintendent evaluations for a number of other districts, and asked him for some recommendations of some instruments and processes that he has seen work very well. And so he provided some samples to me, 5 or 6, I believe, and I shared those with Dr. Little, and just to, for him to, what do you think would work, what do you think would not work? And the one that he and I both came back to was an instrument that is basically the model, the template superintendent evaluation introduced by the American Association of School Administrators several years ago. And it's the instrument that, in process, that Richland 2 has used for the last few years for their superintendent. And I've talked at length with their board chair, and Dr. Little has talked at length with their superintendent, and we both got feedback that it works very well for both the board and the superintendent. And so I took that AASA model and typed it up and added a few additions to it. But what the hope is that the board members will look at that and that we have a conversation over the next month to 6 weeks about, I like this language, or, I think that maybe that, the board provide feedback on this draft that we have provided. This draft is not a done deal. It's just a recommendation or an idea, a place. I wanted to get a place to get us started because this is a pretty significant undertaking to create a new instrument and a new evaluation tool. And Alan has provided quite a bit of guidance throughout this process. And then one of the other documents that I put together was also, I gleaned from reading probably a dozen or 2 dozen different evaluation tools and white papers and articles from all over the country just on how the process would work. And that's outlined in that additional document that accompanied the draft. But as we've talked about it, Mr. Smith and Dr. Little and I, this year's evaluation that will be conducted in September and during the first Tuesday meeting in October is governed by Dr. Little's existing contract that we signed with him last October. And so this year's evaluation process will follow the same procedure that we've used in the past. But the hope is that the board can, that we can agree on really a significant portion of the new evaluation instrument so that in September, when we are doing the evaluation, Dr. Little's evaluation, as we have in the past, we'll have this new instrument and this new process in our minds, just so we can kind of do a little bit of a parallel process, just to kind of see how the new instrument would work and where the pieces fit in, because it won't be a significant change in the substance that Dr. Little provides, just the form of the substance is going to be different. Instead of providing us a 13-page single-spaced narrative, it will be a template that outlines performance objectives and performance indicators that he will provide evidence to us that support his performance and the district's progress during the year to those goals that we set. And then in October, when we conduct his evaluation and sign his new contract, that will initiate a new contract year using the new instrument and the new process. So that's why we needed to get this going soon, because we have several months of work to do to get to October when this basically goes live. Is that right, Mr. Smith?
That's correct, yes.
And so that's why this is in the document has been provided to you at this time, kind of as for information. But my hope is, and Dr. Little's hope is, that over the next few weeks, that board members, that you'll look at the draft and really provide feedback and suggestions. And we will pull those together and kind of go through those and incorporate them and discuss them as a group at our next board meeting and make the changes with an eye towards eventually revising the contract so that it reflects this new process.
Correct.
Dr. Little, did you want to make any comments?
No, I appreciate all the work that has been put into this. Thank you, Mr. Smith. I'm actually really excited about switching gears on the evaluation process. It'll allow us as a team to really look at the evaluation process from a year perspective, a 365-day angle, as opposed to what typically happens is where we're constructing this narrative. The narrative, as by definition, is really it's a vehicle that has to be constructed all at the same time, and it's August. And we're trying to open school, and we're doing leading as one, and we have convocation, and we have all these major events, and at the same time, I'm trying to construct this narrative. So having the tool that will allow us to really do that, I think it'll look at, from our perspective, as an evaluation where if it's adopted, and I don't know what the first Tuesday in October is, it's either the 1st or 2nd or something like that, or the 5th, I'm sorry, maybe the 5th. The October 5th, if that's adopted upon the completion of this evaluation, we really could start working on next year's evaluation technically on October the 6th. And so that helps kind of broaden that view out for the year. So I'm really excited about switching to new kind of tool.
Other than Richland 2, what other like districts are using this tool for their superintendent?
There are not very many that are using this kind of a written instrument. I know Richland 2 uses a form of a written instrument. Most of the other school districts we work with don't use the written instrument. So, and I'm not surprised that Lexington 1's at the forefront. And I'm a little biased because I'm a resident of Lexington 1. I mean, it's nice to see this district continue to be on the forefront, and you're going to be establishing what I mentioned to Anne Marie. I think she's developed what's going to become the gold standard for superintendent evaluations in the future.
Board, do you have any other questions for me or Mr. Smith or Dr. Little on this? Again, this is the launching of this process, but hopefully the work that Dr. Little and Mr. Smith and I have done will, we're not starting at the very first block. Hopefully we're starting a little ways down the road, but again, this is provided to you for feedback, because this is definitely something that the whole board is involved in, and that we want to make sure that it's an instrument and a process that is effective for us, and an effective method for us to provide feedback to the superintendent. And also, one of the things that I kept in mind as I was going through the research that I did on this is what we do needs to live beyond when we're board members and beyond when Dr. Little is a superintendent, because we need to think towards future boards and the district for a number of years to come. So I encourage you to send feedback. You can send it to me and Dr. Little, or share it with the whole board, and we'll incorporate it and work through that together. So, all right. Anybody have any questions?
I just have a comment. I just want to say thank you for all the work put into this. Like, this is a great beginning, and I mean, it's really not even a foundation, it's a whole project. So I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Thank you.
All right. All right, items. We are 12.0, items for board information. You have received several items in your board packet: the general fund budget transfers, the monthly capital projects report, and the monthly unauthorized procurements report. I would also like to point out that due to the year-end close, the general fund report is not available and was not in your packet this time. All right. We are at adjournment. Before we adjourn, I want to mention that the district's summer camps and programs have been going strong and are wrapping up. We'd like to recognize all of the district staff that has coordinated these programs, and the teachers and staff that have worked during their summer break to provide services to our students. Students have been busy learning, and I know that they've had a lot of fun along the way, because our teachers and staff put together amazing programs that keep students engaged, and they really want to come to these programs. And we do hope that you enjoy the remainder of your summer. It's going by very quickly. Our next meeting is actually the first day of school, and so it's here. So time to shift gears. Do I hear a motion to adjourn this meeting?
Madam Chair, I move that we adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Is there a second? Thank you, Mr. Oswald. All in favor, please go home.